Chapter 127. Family Violence. Heine stands there looking around himself as the scene shifts one more time. "I waited a long time to show you this," says a voice from behind him. "I waited a long time to tell you this." A hand places itself on his shoulder. "Hi tilde ni tilde ni tilde hi tilde," croaks the voice of the big frog. Heine turns his head around, looking at her sickly pale face and deep emerald eyes. "What a crock of shit," replies the man. He grabs her wrist, wrenching it off of himself. Her prosthetic arm detaches at the elbow and he stands there holding onto it. The man looks at it for a moment, processing, and then tosses it down to the ground. It clatters against the floor, rattling away. "Look, I don't care what you're selling me. We've been through this song and dance already," he says. "I'm giving you one chance to cut the crap," he says, walking up to the big frog Nakia and grabbing her by the collar. "See?" she asks. This is what she was talking about. "You're proving them right," says Nakia. She lifts her other hand, the real one, and shushes him with a froggy, damp finger over his lips. "Don't worry, I've never forgotten about you." "I've tried being nice," replies Heine. He grabs her other wrist, yanking it to the side, and kicks her leg out from beneath her. The other prosthetic limb flies away as he lets go, and she falls down onto the ground, onto her back. The wood clatters as it rolls away. Heine looks down at the big frog. "I'm sick of you putting the people I care about in danger because of this weird obsession of yours." He narrows his eyes. "This is ending now." Nakia looks at him and then coyly tilts her head to the side, her hand pulling the upper cut of her dress down to the side. "What are you going to do to me?" she asks. "Okay. Wow, that's super weird, you know," replies Heine, looking down at her. "One, because of the story you just tried to sell me that we're related, which again, not buying it," he says. "And two, and I can't make this clear enough anymore," says Heine. "I'm just not into you." "It's the truth," replies Nakia. "I'm not selling you anything," says the big frog. "You think that you came back home to the south to find answers about yourself, don't you?" Heine stands there, his finger ready to snap. "I came down here to help my family," he replies. "But hi tilde ni tilde ni tilde hi." Nakia smiles, pulling the fabric of her dress down a little lower. "I'm your family." "Nope." Heine snaps his fingers. Heine uses ash. Antichrysalis, a cloud of ash disperses all around himself, and the room that they're inside of, which he recognizes as belonging to the little house in the forest that he had seen in the vision, is filled with burning cinders. Heine stands there, the fabrics of his clothes billowing in the infernal tempest. "I spent years looking for you," says a voice from behind him. "Lives." Heine looks over his shoulder. "Not enough to catch my interest," he says. Heine uses ash. Antichrysalis, another cloud of burning ash erupts out of his hand. The house around them catches on fire. "How the hell did you get me?" asks Heine. "What tricks did you pull?" He looks around the room. "Is this another dream? I wasn't even asleep." "Tricks?" asks the big frog. There's laughter in the embers. "Oh, Heine, you're so silly," she sighs. "I really wish we could have stayed in that other life together. That was so much fun, wasn't it?" asks Nakia. "Just you and your lover, Nakia, growing up together in a perfect life." "I am not above beating a crippled woman," replies Heine, grasping out into the darkness. "And you're not my sister or anything else," he says. "I already have one of both of those." His fingers clutch something soft and he yanks it back towards himself. His fist rises and then pushes forward, right into the open mouth of a giant frog twice his size. Its mouth wraps closed around his hand. "The hell?" Heine tries to yank his arm back, but it's firmly stuck. He can feel something wet inside the mouth, a tongue moving around his hand, along it, gliding between his fingers. "It was my fault," says a voice that resounds from the quite literal big frog that has swallowed his arm. "She told me to take you and to hide," says Nakia. "But I didn't. I just hid beneath the bed by myself," says the voice. Heine looks at the frog's yellow eyes, lifting his other hand to snap his fingers with it instead. "I spent my life trying to make that right again," explains Nakia. "I haven't used any tricks to get you here, Heine," says Nakia. You came to me this time. Heine, feeling the tongue sliding along his fingers, has a change of heart. He snaps the finger on the hand inside of the frog's mouth instead. Heine uses ash. Antichrysalis, its mouth widens, and there's a loud scream as she spits out the cloud of ash, vanishing in an instant. Heine looks at his hand, covered in wet, ashy gunk, and shakes it off. He scans the area, getting ready for her to come again. Her screams have quieted. I deserved that, says the voice from the darkness. That hurt a lot, you know. But if using my body this way instead makes you happy, then that's okay, says Nikia. It must have hurt a lot for you too, and that's my fault. Get a grip, replies Heine, pulling a strand of slime off of his fingers. First of all, I'm fine, he says. I'm getting married to a much more attractive woman than you, says the man. Also, she's not batshit crazy. Is that so, she asks. Yup, replies Heine. Then why did you come to me, she asks. The South is my domain, I own it. The forest, the pond, the tree, says Nikia. All of them are mine, you came to me. Heine narrows his eyes, looking around the smoldering inferno. The house continues to burn. He lifts his scarf up, covering his nose and mouth. Oh, did nobody tell you that? Asks the voice from behind him. You didn't come down here to escape the city life or to find out about your past, says the frog god. You came down here because she made you come down here, she explains, referring to Obscura. Just like she made you become a weaponsmith, says the frog god. Just like she made you become someone who lives up to exactly the horrible expectations that the people who killed our mother had for us. She wouldn't do that. She did, replies Nikia. I love you, Heine. Heine looks over his shoulder, trying to find the big frog. Gross. And I would never lie about this. It's the truth, croaks the big frog. You might feel your heart beating for her, says Nikia. Heine circles sideways, moving towards where he remembers the door being. But her heart beats for me, not you, says the big frog. In her sleep, in her thoughts, in her everyday, all she ever can think about. Heine grabs the handle, pulling it open, only to see the large, yellow eye of the big frog on the other side staring at him. Is me. Heine uses ash. Antichrysalis the frog howls and then vanishes, and Heine bolts out into the forest, trying to orient himself. It's the middle of the night, and the forest is heavy with darkness that drapes over it like a blanket. Heine looks back at the burning house and grabs a piece of wood, breaking it off and holding it into the fire to make a makeshift torch before he runs off into the night. The man scans the darkness, trying to find her. But he can't see anything except for the silhouettes of hundreds of trees that seem to be facing towards him, looming down over him like the claws of a hungry monster with far too many fingers. This can't be true. 1, because having the big frog as his sister would be extremely weird for a variety of reasons, and 2, well, because he'd just really prefer if it wasn't. That's it, really. Heine wanders the forest, trying to orient himself as he gains distance from the little cabin. It's dangerous to be out here in the forest. If what she said is true, then he isn't just near the center of the nation anymore. He's in the South, in the deep South. There are things in these woods that he isn't equipped to deal with. His eyes turn back towards the burning house behind himself for a moment, deciding what to do. Heine makes his choice pretty easily and heads into the forest, holding his torch out ahead of himself. Heine's eyes chase the drifting shadows, which part ways as he moves past them. Although sometimes they do not and instead cling firmly in place, as if entirely resistant to the glow of the fire in his hands, as if it were simply not as real as they were. Is this really her territory? The big frog's? If it is, then it would make sense how easily he was captured. He didn't even know it was happening. Hell, the last thing he remembers is going over some stuff with Rhine, and then bam, Frog City. Heine extends the torch out, trying to find the way. But the forest all looks the same, no matter which way he turns. Even if it is true, and assuming that Obscura had brought them here just so that she could hunt the big frog, that altogether only answers one question of his. It only tells him where he was back as a child, before he came to the northern city with his elf stepmother, the woman who had apparently killed his real mother for some reason. But it doesn't tell him what happened after that. Assuming this story is true, and the big frog really is the missing key factor in the start of his life, then what the hell happened after that? Heine stares out into the darkness. Why did he kill his stepmother and stepfather? What happened on that day in his adolescence, after years of quiet stability? What happened on that day that Eilig won't tell him about? That's such a big, important secret that seemingly everybody else knows about except him. Heine looks up at a tree. It looks particularly tall. He plants the torch down into the grass and then dusts his hands climbing up it. It might help if he gets some perspective. He's really tired of all of this God stuff. Can't they all just fuck off and settle their differences somewhere else? Barring Obscura, of course. She can stay here with him, but the rest of them, they can go. Heine reaches the top of the tree, pushing his head out through the thick, heavy crown, expecting to see the relieving sight of a sky full of stars and cream-toned moonlight. He thumps his head against something hard and recoils in surprise, wincing. "SHH," shushes a voice from just next to him. Heine turns to look at Nakia, who is right beside himself. Despite having just climbed a tree, he is somehow back in the cabin again. The two of them are lying beneath a bed, inside of a small cabin that is now no longer burning. The vision of it has been reset. A woman stands at the foot of the bed, consoling a girl. He looks down below himself, down at where the tree should be that he had just climbed up. However, there is nothing there except for a flat, solid hardwood floor that he now lays on top of. "Let's watch it together this time," she says, her hand sliding over to touch the top of his leg. Their mother's body flops against the floor. Blood pours out of her wound as the scene that had been projected to him just before repeats itself. The elf walks over to the bed just in front of them and takes the baby, leaving again as the memory loops. Heine yanks her hand off of himself and snaps his fingers. Heine uses Ash. Antichrysalis failed. Insufficient soul points remaining. Nothing happens. She smiles. "Oh, are you out of soul points?" asks her voice. "You should have been more serious about that training with your elf friend, I guess." Heine looks her way, trying to figure out a way to get out of her magic spell that is keeping him locked in this illusion, dream state, or whatever the hell this is. Her hand holds her cheeks as she looks his way, the two of them squished beneath the bed frame. "So, Ninny Tilda, what are we going to do together under the bed?" asks the big frog, her long tongue sticking out of her mouth. Ribbit Tilda, the blood from their freshly murdered mother's corpse runs down towards them, soaking through the floorboards. Chapter 128. You and I together have 4 letters as a child. Their mother, a human who had been living in the deep forests of the south, was murdered by a clan of fearful elves. The elves were afraid of a foreboding sign brought to them through sages and starlight, a sign that told of the chaotic, horrific destruction that the woman's children would cause. This was the case because they were gifted with very unusual magic for the south, Ash. The elf who murdered their mother then took him as an offering to the owl god of the time. However, at the last minute, she had a change of heart and instead fled the south, fled the forest, and took the baby that would later become Heine with her to the north. Nakia, his sister by blood, had, after her failed attempt to rescue him and her following mutilation, became a thing used by the smaller, weaker creatures of the forest to resist the owl god, and so she became the frog god, the big frog. Heine spent his early childhood growing up in the north. The elven woman who kidnapped him, his stepmother, cut her own ears to hide her identity and eventually met a man, his stepfather. The two of them would go on to raise him, at least until the day came when Heine killed them both. Why he did this is still uncertain. He has no recollection of the incident. All the while, Nakia remained in the south, amongst the frogs. After the death of the owl god and its mate and the flight of Obscura, also to the north, the frog god remained in the forest and grew amongst the frogs. Her power rose, and the other gods of the region slowly bowed their heads in order to avoid the fate of being consumed. She looked everywhere that she could over the span of those years. But how does one find an unmarked baby in a world as large as this? How does one find a single elven woman with no name in a world as full and thriving as this one? Even for a god, this is hard to do. But what is not hard to do is to watch the offspring of the owl god, Obscura. Even weakened and far away, the progeny of a god releases potent, powerful magics from itself that are almost impossible to hide. So what an odd twist of fate it was that this very creature would land in the same place as he had, the north. The frogs found him through her. That's why they had always insisted on specifically kidnapping him rather than hurting him. It was never about the feud between the owl god and the frogs. That was just something on the side, an annoyance. For the frogs, the guild in the northern city was a small outpost, far, far away from home. But the main quarter of the frogs' power is in the southern region of the world. Whereas Obscura has always been obsessed with her hunt for the big frog, the big frog couldn't care less about Obscura. Her real interest, her real ambition has always been Heine. Heine pushes open the door, walking out of the house into the forest. His eyes wander around the forest, as they had done several times before now. This isn't his first attempt at leaving the cabin, and he's sure it won't be his last. "I can't let you leave," says a voice from behind him. "I wish you'd stop." Heine waves the big frog off and slams the door. "Tough shit," he replies. The man wanders off into the forest, walking through the underbrush. A moment later, he arrives right back where he started. Despite the impossibility of the matter, Heine finds himself standing back inside the little house. Every attempt he makes to leave somehow has him end up right back where he started. "We can be normal here together, Ninitilda," says Nekia. "You and me where nobody can judge us." He looks back at her. "I'm pretty normal already. You might be a bit out there though, yeah," he replies. "Anyways, who cares what other people think?" He opens the door again, stepping out into the forest. "You do," she replies. Heine looks back at Nekia, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Otherwise you wouldn't be so obsessed about leaving." Heine slams the door again and walks off into the forest. A minute later, he arrives back inside the house, despite his best efforts to leave it. "There's a difference between caring about what people think and caring about people," says Heine. "You wouldn't get it," he says. "I don't have time to waste my life with you because there are people who I actually care about out there." "Do you?" asks Nekia, lifting her hand to spin a finger through her hair to play with it. "Or do you just think you do because you've been brainwashed by the owl?" Heine slams the door again. "Take off that ridiculous wig," says the man, waving a hand over his shoulder. He walks through the forest. A minute later, he arrives back at the house. Heine looks over his shoulder. Nekia is sitting there. Her wig is in her hands and her head is held down somewhat lower as if she were ashamed. "Do you like me better this way?" "I don't like you at all," replies Heine. "But that's because you're a crazy, obsessive monstrosity with no sense of personal boundaries," he explains, lifting an eyebrow. "You can't get over the past, so you've gone off the deep end in every way imaginable. Should I take off my dress next?" Heine walks out of the door, slamming it shut. "Damn frogs, or a frog singular." He rolls his eyes, snapping his fingers in the hopes that he'll set the house on fire with his ash magic. But nothing happens. He's still out of soul points. How the hell is he going to get out of here? He has no way of breaking the big frog's magic by himself. Will the others even notice he's gone? They did last time. He can count on them. They're his people. Obscura, Rhine, Sokol, Eilig, wherever she is, they won't let him vanish. They've proven that already. Heine steps back into the house, despite just being in the forest a second ago. "I know what you're thinking," says Nekia. Heine grabs the door again to open it once more. "You're thinking that you just have to wait it out because your friends are going to come for you." "They're not my friends, they're my family," says Heine, opening the door. You're ugly, says the voice from behind him. Ribbit tilde Heine stops. What? He asks, looking back at her. Nikia sits there with a lowered head. I'm sorry, says Nikia, looking up at him. But you are, so am I, says the frog god. Ugly people don't get to have friends and family like the other people do. Wow, what the hell am I even supposed to say to that? Asks Heine. He shakes his head. I just told you I have a family. He turns to walk toward the door again. Do you? Asks Nikia. Or do you just feel like you have one because the owl manipulated them to be around you, just like she's manipulating you to get back at me? Heine steps out of the door and walks out into the forest. He arrives back at the house. Do you think that she doesn't know? Asks Nikia. She tosses her wig across the room at him and Heine instinctively catches it. It smells like frogs. Or do you think that she can't smell it on you, that she can't see it in your eyes? Asks the big frog. Our connection. How could the owl god, renowned for seeing and noticing things that nobody else can, miss that you and I are connected by blood? She didn't. It's impossible. I have nothing to do with you, replies Heine. You're sick and damaged, and I hope you can find the place in life you need to be at to get better. He slams the door and walks out into the forest. He looks down at his hands, noticing that he's still holding the wig. He tosses it up over a tree and then keeps walking. Sure enough, he arrives back inside the house. Let me ask you something, says the big frog. Heine stands there staring at the door. Just imagine for a second a life in which you never met the owl, a life in which she never took any influence over you, says Nikia. Do you think that, even if you crossed paths with Rhine, with Sokol, or with any of your other family, they would want anything to do with you? She asks. Or would you just be a creature they see from the corners of their eyes and pity? Of course they'd still be with me, replies Heine without skipping a beat. Rhine's a good man, the best one I know, and I could say similar things about all of the others. I'd die for them. He looks at her. Which ones of your followers would die for you? He asks. All of them, replies Nikia immediately. Because that is my power as a god. I hold sway and influence over their minds and hearts, she explains. It is the nature of my presence. She takes off a glove, pointing at him with her two remaining fingers on that hand. And just like you are now, they're too enamored to see the spell for what it really is. She takes off her other glove, looking down at her remaining fingers. I'm your family, Heine. I'm the only one who really spent a lifetime looking for you, because it's what I wanted in my heart, not because of any magic. Heine opens the door. Do you think they'd look as long? She asks. Do you think that in decades from now they'll still be looking for you? Nikia gets up. Because that's how long I looked for you, she says. I never stopped. She walks towards him. Or do you think that in a little while, once the magic of the owl god wears off of them and you fade from their memories, that you'll just be forgotten? She asks. That the memory of you will be written off by them as a curiosity of life. She stands behind him, holding him from behind. That your image in their head, she stands on her toes, will be blown away like a puff of ash, she asks, blowing into his ear from behind. Ribbit tilde Heine sighs and turns his head around. How long are you going to do this? He asks. As long as it takes. You know that I can't kill you even if I want to, he says. She nods. Would you like to hit me more? Asks Nikia. You can. I want you to. It makes me happy. You can do whatever you want. And I'm stopping you there, interrupts Heine. To get back to my point, I can't kill you and you're not planning on killing me, so what the hell is this? He asks. Are we really just going to sit here in this stupid cabin and what? I'm just going to keep walking out of the door and you're going to keep preaching your spiel until the sun goes down. The big frog croaks, her throat stretching a little. All the while my people are looking for me and they'll inevitably find me and your fourth and last attempt will be done with. The game will be over. So what the hell is this? He asks. Oh, Heine, you're always so silly, says the big frog. We're not going to stay here forever, she says. We've just come here to the forest, far, far away from where anyone can bother us, starts Nikia, tapping against his nose. To get all of that nasty owl magic out of your system, she says. There's nothing that the great outdoors can't do, she says. Ribbit tilde great and then, he asks. I'm still going to love Obscura and I'm still going to think you're a creep. I'm still going to cherish the people I care about who aren't you, and the sun will rise and the moon will fall and then that's Tuesday. We'll see about that, says Nikia. Heine sighs and rolls his eyes, pulling the door open. The thing is, she says, I'm not going to keep you here forever, explains Nikia. Just for a little while until her magic wears off. And then I'm going to let you go back by yourself. Heine raises an eyebrow. Just like that, huh? Just like that, replies Nikia. And you know what I think, she asks. He shakes his head. I really don't, says Heine. The big frog hops onto his back, wrapping her legs and arm around him. He stumbles forward, balancing himself to not fall over. I think, she says, whispering into his ear, that when you see what it's really like there, in that life that you think you like so much that you'll come hopping back to me, says Nikia. On your hands and knees, high tilde knee tilde ni tilde high tilde, that's dumb, he says. We already lived together before, remember. That was my miscalculation, says Nikia. In that state your spirit was with me but your body remained with them, she explains. The owls still had power over you, but out here Nini tilde, says the big frog. It's just you and me for real. Forever, she whispers into his ear. Or well, 4 days, Nikia shrugs. You know. Heine sighs and slams the door shut again, trying to shake the creature off of himself. Chapter 129. The ninny man Heine stands out in the deep forest, further away from the cabin. Water shimmers before him, catching dancing rays of moonlight. He stares down at the pond, looking at the tepid waters. Hundreds of small frogs sit all around the edge of the water, or on lily pads and rocks, croaking their frog songs. He lifts his hand, getting ready to snap his fingers. But he doesn't. They're just some wild animals minding their own business. It's not right to hurt them for existing. Hunting for food for an owl is one thing, but just killing them for the sake of killing them is cruel and unnecessary for someone holding onto the threads of the human spirit. Heine sighs and lowers his hand again. Why, he asks. Why did they kill her, asks Heine, referring to his birth mother. Because of the ash magic, he asks. There is a loud croaking from the side of the pond. Because Ninny, starts Nikia. You don't get to call me that, replies Heine. That was the name my mother used for me. Your mother, our mother, died here, she replies. No, my mother died when I killed her myself for whatever damn reason, replies Heine. Whoever this woman was, I didn't know her. She died to protect you, Ninny tilde, replies the big frog. Heine narrows his eyes. People are afraid of what they don't understand, she explains. You know this. Look at your face, she instructs. Heine looks down at the water, staring at the burnt man who stares back up at him. Nikia hobbles over and bends down, pressing a finger against the surface of the water to distort their reflections. People like us are different and so we range, she says. We range from being fully invisible to the eyes of those who are around us to being a point of focused revulsion. There is little else in between. Dunno, says Heine. I think I was a pretty cute baby. He shakes his head. Anyway, I've come to terms with the way I look. This is me, I'm fine. He watches his reflection waver in the water. You'd be smart to figure that out too, instead of being such a downer your whole life. You were, she replies. Fine. But what those elves thought was ugly and fearful then was not your skin or your face. It was just your existence, just like mine. Ribbit tilde. Ash magic isn't that big of a deal though, says Heine. Rhine told me a while back that there are lots of other people with it. Nikia reaches out into the water, pulling out a water lily that a frog is sitting on. It hops off, finding a different perch, as she pulls the flower out of the water and holds it up to him to smell. Heine finds this gesture rather offensive in a way that he simply can't explain. He turns his head to look off to the side. You still don't know the truth of it all, do you? She asks. Heine rolls his eyes, looking back towards her. How the hell am I supposed to if everyone around me is always cryptically vague and mysterious? He says, waving his fingers in front of her face. Bunch of wobbly woo, says Heine. Nobody can ever just form a straight sentence and get to the point. It's all secrets this and spooky that. Nakia, seeing his indifference to her gesture, smells the flower that she's holding herself. Did you ever think that if people wanted to be honest with you that they would be? Sometimes I wonder if that's even possible, replies Heine. With you gods always messing with people's minds, he shakes his head. When I look at the effect you or Obscura have on people, I wonder, says Heine. He looks back at the pond. What effect do the other gods have? On everyone. The god of death, the god of the forge, Avarice the god of wealth, these prominent figures and all of the other hundreds and hundreds of gods. Each and every one of them exudes a mind-altering influence over those who are close to them, those who follow them, and even just those who spend too much time around them. So what influence is taken on the city by Avarice's bank being its core? The Tower District, in which several elemental gods live. What influence does it have over the people when the temple of the literal god of death is in their midst? Is there even one single free thought in the whole world, he asks? Or is it godfuckery all the way down? He listens to the frog song, singing out through the night, a serenade with nobody around who would dance to it. This is the nature of the universe, replies Nakia. There are things which are apparent, but we are not able to speak of them because the words do not reach the tips of our tongues. Ribbit Tilda, she sets the flower back down, pushing it off into the pond with a finger. There are visions dancing right in front of your eyes, but you can't see them because, well, what? Asks Heine. See, you're doing it too, just tell me what the problem with the world is and get it over with. You saw it before, says Nakia. You've heard it before. You heard it when we were last together, she explains. When my vision of our future was collapsing. The hint that the universe had to give you. Ribbit Tilda, what? Asks Heine. He steps towards her. What the hell are you talking about? Nakia holds out a hand to him and he looks at her warily. I will tell you in simple words, she says, for a dance. No, replies Heine, you're weird and you smell like frogs. Nakia frowns. A kiss, she asks. Again, that's a weird thing to ask, he explains. You realize how strange that is since we're related, right? He asks. Nakia holds her arms out to her side, smiling a smug smile. See? She asks him. The owl's magic is beginning to wear off. You believe me about our relationship, she says. Heine narrows his eyes, looking at her. It's true, he might actually be buying the whole them being brother and sister story now. It all lines up too well to ignore. It fits all of the missing pieces together. Want to know about frogs? Asks Nakia. I really don't, says Heine. Really? Can I tell you something anyway? Asks the big frog. Heine sighs. Your priestess in the north, Anura, already told me about them at great length, he says. She's a nice person, by the way. I did her wrong. He looks at the frog god. Do me a favor and find her a nicer place to live. Nakia smiles and spins once before reaching him and placing her hands against his chest to lean in closer towards him. The thing is, she looks up at him with her emerald eyes and smiles. When they're young, frogs eat their siblings, whispers Nakia, her long tongue coiling out of her mouth to lift up towards his face. Sorry, I'm overcooked, replies Heine, lifting an eyebrow. She laughs, stepping back from him. You're so funny, Ninny Tilda, says Nakia, wiping her eyes as she laughs. I used to think about eating you often, she says. The big frog clasps her hands together. Every day, I never stopped thinking about it. That's how I could make us whole again, you know. Replies Heine. Just gonna leave that one there as is. But then I thought about how sad I was losing you the first time, and then how sad it would be to lose you a second time, explains Nakia. 2 more times and you win the game, he replies. The big frog steps towards him. But then I thought I can just make you mine and we can be together again. Or, starts Heine. You could have written a letter and invited me to brunch, he suggests. You know, hug and a cup of tea, asks the man. Why does everything have to be kidnapping and dream magic? Because the owl won't allow it any other way, replies Nakia. She's using you as a tool to get to me, says the big frog. You're just a useful idiot to her. Heine lifts a hand, pointing at her. You're talking about my wife-to-be. Rein it in before I get mad. See, she asks. I can threaten and harass you and you won't say a word, but as soon as I mention her, you get angry. That's because I care about her more than I do about me, replies Heine. It has nothing to do with magic. What happens after she eats me? Asks Nakia. Heine lowers his hand. What? After your wife murders and eats your sister in front of you, what happens then? She asks. Do you really think that she'll need you anymore? Asks the frog god. Why would she need or want you, Heine? Heine looks at her. You think that a god, someone who could have any strong, perfect mate in this world, would want you? Asks Nakia, pointing down at the water. Heine looks, staring at the reflection of a scarred person staring back up his way. Horseshit, replies Heine, looking back at her and pointing at himself. You're looking at a premium cut of man right here, says Heine. I think you've been drinking too much pond water. Nakia smiles, clasping her hands. There it is, Ninny Tilda, she says excitedly. You said the magic word. Keep this conversation in mind, will you? Asks the frog god. When everything happens, you'll understand. Heine sighs, rolling his eyes and walking off into the forest. He waves a hand over his shoulder. More cryptic nonsense. Make some flashcards next time so you can get to the point instead of whatever this was. He shakes his head. So was this number 4? He asks. Can I just go now, or do I have to wait to be rescued again? Nakia points towards the north. You can leave, says the big frog. But I think that at the very end you'll find your way back to me when you have to make your choice. Noted, he replies, not sure what that means. Heine looks over his shoulder. Before I go back then, why did those elves kill that woman and want to kill us too? He asks. Because, replies Nakia, stepping a step back into the pond. They were afraid of who you would choose. High tilde ni tilde ni tilde high tilde. She steps back and vanishes into the water. It's quiet. Heine stands there staring at the ripples, wondering if she's just sitting under there waiting for him to leave in an attempt to look mysterious as he goes. He crosses his arms, waiting at the edge of the pond. The man tilts his head. After a minute, half of a froggy face pops up out of the water. Seeing him standing there, she quickly vanishes again, diving back down. Yeah, I thought so, sighs Heine as he turns and starts walking back home. Why are gods all like this? Chapter 130. 5 ninny men walk into a forest. How many frogs are in his head? Heine wanders through the deep forest alone, simply unable to tell if it is night or day. The heavy, looming boughs of the trees hang heavily over his head. Their thick, old branches hold an interconnected crown aloft that is so thick and dense that to see beyond it is a simple impossibility. He's tried starting a fire with his ash magic in order to burn his way through to the sky. But the leaves and the wood are so rich and moist that the hottest sparks that he can produce simply don't ignite into flames. Bunch of wobbly-woo, mutters Heine to himself, wandering towards where he vaguely assumes north to be. The least the frog god could have done would have been to bring him back, since he'd been kidnapped all the way down to the south. But no, he has to walk. Heine sighs, standing still. His eyes rise up towards the canopy and he thinks, why haven't any of the others come for him? Rhine, Obscura, Sokol. They've always come to find him when this stuff happens. He stands there, staring at the odd crown of leaves rustling together. They're thousands of individual silhouettes meshed together like an unentangleable bundle of matted, greasy hair. Do they not know where he is? That's possible, right? Heine keeps on walking as the forest rustles around him with the whisper of many excitedly shaking leaves. Sure, they live on the edge of a war zone and all. It's possible that anyone who thinks he went missing would point fingers at the elves first. They live right next door, after all. The south, the deep south, where he is, this is further away. The territory of the big frog, how many days or weeks away is this by cart? How many months is it away from his people by foot? Sure, They'd think of the frogs eventually and think to look for him at the pond of the big frog, and if she could, Obscura would have done so already, or surely the owl god can just fly there over the forest. It wouldn't take a day, and if he's been told the truth, he's been gone for 4 now. Or can she not do that? Heine rubs the back of his head. How does Obscura's power even stack up to the big frog's? It's never been put to the test, has it? Maybe she's not strong enough to fly through all of this to reach him. After all, if she was, then she wouldn't have spent all of this time collecting power. That means that even if she knows that he is here, the owl god can't get to him while he's in the overpowering domain of the frog god. Heine sighs in relief. That means he hasn't been abandoned. He's just somewhere unreachable this time. The whispering voice in the back of his head dissipates as he shakes it off and keeps walking. Would Nekia let him walk through here by himself if it wasn't safe? It is later, he thinks. It's hard to say. The forest all looks the same, and when you walk, it all kind of looks like it did a minute ago. With nobody to talk to or to focus on, time gets weird. But he recalls all of the horrific stories of things here and there that scour these woods, especially this deep down in the south incomprehensible, strange, horrific things. Heine sees nothing of the sort. Surely Nekia, in her odd insistence on kidnapping instead of murdering him, wouldn't send him out into the wilds here to get eaten on his way back. He looks around the area and shrugs, deciding to keep walking for a while. He could use a bite to eat. But well, that's life. The forest whispers. This is very unusual for a forest to be doing, of course. Heine narrows his eyes, watching the trees that are speaking Elvish as he walks, getting ready to snap his fingers at something. He should have enough soul points left for a few spells. It's definitely nighttime now. He can tell because of how cold it's gotten. Heine grabs a stick, trying to set it alight, but the spell doesn't catch. The wood here in this part of the forest is just too wet and damp to even start smoldering a little. The man sighs, tossing it over his shoulder and into the underbrush. Barring the odd power nap, he hasn't slept in days. Sleeping in the presence of the big frog was, of course, not really something he wanted to do. She's creepy and weird and would probably either touch him or eat him in his sleep, likely both at the same time. His vision wobbles. Heine stares off into the forest. It's whispering to him again. He doesn't really like what it has to say. It has a very negative disposition. Sleeping here doesn't seem like a great plan either, though. How many days has he been mostly awake for? Is it 5? He deliriously looks down at his hand, trying to count. Yeah, 5 sounds about right. For a second he only sees 2 fingers on his hands as if they were Nekia's, but then he blinks and wiggles his digits and finds that all of them are where they should be. 5, just how I like M, says Heine, looking at his hand. 5 is a good number. First, it's a good number of digits to have. Second, it's a good number of days to have not slept. Third, Heine stands in the middle of the forest, thinking about at least 3 other things that are good to have in 5s. The trees continue to whisper. By the time he counts to 5, his blurred vision spinning, he looks back up at the people coming out of the forest towards him. Elves. Ah, hell, mutters Heine as they encircle him, weapons drawn. He narrows his eyes, counting them. 8, how meaningless. What kind of number is 8? Casts Dream Whisper on Heine applied status. Sleep, he falls to the ground, sleeping for exactly 5 hours as a man in his position is wont to do. 5 is an important number after all. Heine groggily wakes up, shaking his head. His hands are tied behind his back. His legs are sliding along the ground as 2 people hold onto some ropes and drag him backwards behind them through the forest. He turns his head, looking at them. Elves. Well, shit. He supposes that this was to be expected. But also, it wasn't. He thought Nekia had him covered. So much for that theory. The man blinks, his adrenaline doing a fair amount of work to cut through his delirium. The world spins, and he feels very dizzy. 5 hours just wasn't enough sleep for how long he was up. The man fiddles with his fingers, managing to worm them free a little, enough so that he can use his magic. Heine silently thanks Sokol for that family lecture she held on methods of escaping from being tied up. Seeing that he's awake, the elves talk to each other, saying something that he doesn't understand. They don't exactly look happy, though. They get into an argument, one of them is pointing at him. The forest whispers. The elves stop, all of them stiffening up as they look around themselves. "What?" asks Heine. He gets sharply shushed by the one holding the rope to his right, a woman with long, silvery hair. Heine looks around them as the trees rustle and the leaves shake. The group tightens up into a circle, looking around themselves. There is a tenseness in the air. Heine can't help but feel like they're just small mice standing in the den of a hungry cat. A horrific scream comes from the group and is immediately silenced. Heine turns around and looks and sees nothing. One of the elves from the troop is simply gone, having been snatched by. He looks around the area. By nothing. There's nothing he can see. One of the elves is just gone, just like that. The others shout out loudly and then turn to run. The woman with the silver hairs yells at them to help with the ropes, and one of them comes back to help drag him along. Heine considers telling them to just undo his legs so he can run himself, but he feels like he doesn't want to turn his back to the forest. It's better this way. They drag him off. Minutes pass, or maybe hours. He really doesn't know. Time just doesn't feel like it exists down here in the south. The elves pant, having been running at full sprint for a good while now, having reached for the first time a small clearing of sorts that seems to bring them some relief, as odd as that sounds. But apparently in the deep forest, the safest place to be is in the space where there are simply no trees. Heine looks down to the side, seeing a perfectly circular ring of mushrooms. There are 5 of them. Neat. Heine looks back at the group of 7. He narrows his eyes. 6 elves. Weren't there 7 when they started running? Well, there are 6 now. They don't look like they're having a great time, which is fair. Neither is he. Although he had thought that the elves would have an easier time surviving in their own forest. Maybe he can really understand why Sokol wanted nothing more than to do math behind a desk for the rest of her life. He would use a spell to burn his ropes, but they'll see the menu appear if he does. Heine looks up towards the sky, seeing it in all its clarity as if for the very first time. "Holy hell," mutters the man. He's never seen it so bright and clear before. Even in the north, outside of the city, which was spectacular, it was an amazing sight. But this, his eyes wander from star to star, often not sure where one ends and the other begins as he drowns in the sight of them. They're so pristine and so abundant they're beautiful. Something grabs him from behind, pressing him forward. "Hey. Watch the goods," barks Heine over his shoulder, looking at the woman with the silver hair. "Be quiet," she hisses, speaking in a very pronounced accent that he's never heard before. "Idiot, we are being hunted. Do not make it easier for it." She cuts the ropes on his hands. Heine raises an eyebrow, looking at her and then at his freed hands as she goes to untie his legs. "You will valk," she orders. "That's awfully trusting of you. I'm just going to run away, you know," asks Heine. "Then you will serve as a distraction for us to escape," she says. "It hunts stragglers." "What?" asks Heine. "What's it?" "Everything," she hisses, cutting through the ropes around his legs as she looks at the forest all around them. Heine recalls the many tales he had read back in the library in their old house about this place. The night turns dark. The man lifts his eyes and stares up towards the night sky through the clearing, towards the impossibly long, lifting shadow that rises out of the forest. The woman moves behind him, placing her hands on his shoulders and whispering in his ear. "SHH," she orders, holding a hand over his mouth as they watch the thing. The shadow, the whisper-thin limb that is taller than any tree he has ever seen and higher than any mountain he could ever envision, rise up like an uncoiling snake. The long arm that could belong to a monstrosity far beyond this world's normal sort reaches up towards the sky full of so many stars with a long witchy hand with sharp fingers, each the size of a house. Sharp fingers close themselves around a pinprick of light in the sky. It's a good thing that his mouth is covered, because Heine's sure he'd be swearing up a storm right now. What the hell? It is the thing Jat collects stars, she explains quietly into his ear. Heine watches in extremely confused horror as the hand, despite the impossibility of it all, simply clenches its fingers around a point of light in the sky, and then it lowers itself back down into the forest, taking a small orb of light, which never grows any larger the closer to the world it comes, down with it itself into the darkness. And then the night returns just like that, just a little less bright than it was before, missing a star. The woman takes her hand off of his mouth. Heine looks up at her. So am I walking up front, or is it you guys? Chapter 131. A midnight stroll with 7654321 people. The forest croaks with the longing voice of a witch, grasping and reaching out for the flesh of little things that scamper and scurry in the streets at night. The wood of the old trees groans and aches as the wind howls, as 6 silhouettes move through the forest in the glow of supple torchlight, the flames of which do next to nothing to repel the hungry dark. Heine walks, looking around himself as he marches as second in line. Life sure is funny, isn't it? The last thing he recalls before all of this is that he was talking to Rhine about some stuff. Then he spent a few days with the frog god, and now he's been captured by elves, far behind enemy lines. They haven't asked him who he is yet, but he's probably not going to tell them the truth. If his name is infamous amongst the elves, then he hardly wants them to know that he's the very person responsible for crafting what might be some of the most horrific weapons that plague the front lines, stealing the lives of hundreds of people a day. This will be fine for a while, until they make him open a status window. That'll be awkward. He can see it now. He blinks as he repeats that sentence in his head, feeling an unfamiliar weight begin to press down on his core. It runs through his mind once or twice more. He's responsible for so much death and destruction, the loss of so many lives and homes. Sure, he's a weaponsmith, that's his job, but he's never really felt anything about it until now. The man fidgets with his fingers, rubbing a spot on his chest in the hopes that it will make the feeling go away. What is this? Guilt. Why the hell would he feel guilty? He's never felt guilt. It must be the influence of the frog god. She's probably still messing with him. Yeah, Heine lifts his gaze, stopping. He's at the front of the line. The man blinks, looking around himself. The woman with the silver hair behind him bumps into him as she and the others were all looking elsewhere. Keep moving, she hisses, pressing her elbow into him. Heine points at the empty spot. Your guy is gone, says Heine. The others look, seeing that their compatriot is missing, and they devolve into a hissing argument between each other. The woman turns around, saying something in sharp words that he doesn't understand. She turns back to him. Keep moving, repeats the elf, pushing him. Yeah, sure, whatever, remarks Heine. I don't know where the hell I'm going, though, he says, walking on ahead, his eyes scanning the darkness. Straight, says the elf. Just walk straight. Heine lifts a hand over his shoulder, giving her a thumbs up as he does just that. Hours have passed. The 5 people make their way through the haunting forest, listening to the creeping, crawling, and skittering of thousands of leaves as they move in the wind after them, like a legion of sharp-footed spiders that chase after their dancing shadows. Heine thinks about a lot of things. He thinks about his confusing relationships and life. He thinks about the days that have led up to today. Life used to be so simple back when he was a sad wretch. He'd sit at his table and stare out of the window with longing, lost eyes that search for something they never quite managed to find. Then he'd get to work making some shoes for some odd animal or a dinky sword or whatever. That was it. He'd feel bad, he'd work, he'd sleep. That was all there was, and in its infinite simplicity he misses it in a way he can't describe. A hand pushes against his back. Yeah, says Heine. I'm walking. Not that he would ever trade it for what he has now. This new life, as confusing a mess as it is far more whole. He's never sad anymore. He's just a little confused and lost now and then. But he's never sad. Instead, he's fulfilled, happy, content, and busy. All of this is a lot of work, so at odd times like this, when he's just abound with empty hands, his mind wanders to those old things of comfort. There was a comfort to the emptiness. He just can't explain it. But he'll never go back to that. It's just a trick of the mind, of the sickness that plagued him all those months ago. It likes to tell you that things were better, that they were more comfortable, that you could just slide right back into the ooze like nothing ever happened. It's so warm and familiar, the prospect of laying in bed, of sitting in the dark all day. It's a whispering witch, luring you into the night with promises of things sweet and warm. Someone yelps. He turns around and all of them look at the back of the line, where there is now one person less. 4 people walk through the forest, their formation tighter than ever. They've begun holding hands to build a chain. Heine refused, not wanting to hold hands with some strange woman, lest someone misunderstand as odd and dumb as that sounds at a time like this. He wonders if this is a thought brought on by magic, by a god's magic. The power of a god's magic has the ability to override a person's mind, their survival instincts, and their gut feelings and thoughts. So, while he should be terrified for his life, terrified for the fact that he might never see the people who he loves most in this world again, Heine can't help but feel rather blasé about it all. The silver-haired elf is holding onto the back of his shirt, her fingers clenched around the fabric. There's definitely some god's magic working on him. He's perceptive enough to see that now. His attitude is wrong for the situation that he's in. His attitude has been wrong for the situations that he has been in. The war zone, the front line, how could he just drag Rhine to a place like this? How badly is this going to scar the boy's mind? A young man his age shouldn't have to see things like this. And yet Rhine, too, is just quietly accepting of it all, as if it were just a normal circumstance of life. This has to be the effect of Obscura's magic. He hates to admit it, but there's no other explanation. Sure, he and the boy have grown in their levels of confidence to a measurable degree, but what's happening here, this goes beyond confidence. Could what Nakia had said be true? Would Obscura really use him as a prop to get back at her for what happened in the distant past? Is this move to the central city, closer to the south, really just a siege by the Owl God against her old captured territory, and not a sensible move that they all agreed to as a family? Someone stumbles, falling over. All of them fall down into a heap, the torches scattering a little to the sides, hissing as they roll over wet leaves. The elves curse in their language, except for the last one in the back, who screams. The arm of the person who was behind him is still held in his grasp, but the rest of the person is missing. 3 people walk through the forest. So, I hope you have a plan, says Heine, now holding a torch himself. Gir is a safe area not far ahead, says the voice behind him. G client is vading. Sure hope so, says Heine. At this rate I'll be free before he asks. Client, what client? She pushes him. Move, hisses the elf. G client who hired us to rescue you. Asks Heine. Hired? Aren't you guys with the war, the elves and all of that? She hisses, rolling her eyes as she pushes him along. We're mercenaries. We were hired to extract you from G Forest. Idiot. Heine blinks. Hired mercenaries. Who the hell would hire mercenaries to extract him from the man's size in relief understanding? His people didn't leave him here after all. This reeks of Sokol, gods bless her squirrely heart, or maybe avarice. He supposes exotic mercenaries are expensive. Well, no, probably Sokol. He looks back at her to nod. The third man is missing, leaving only the 2 of them. She looks over her shoulder and down at her hand, squeezing it as if she were sure she was still holding something in its empty grasp. Run, she says, grabbing his arm and yanking him after her as they rush off in a sprint. 2 people run through the dark forest, shadows reaching out from behind the witchwood trees, trying to grab them with thousands of sharp, small fingers. The torchlight of their 2 torches shines abound, doing little to dissuade the heavy shadows of the forest from draping itself over their heads, like a swallowing tide of the ocean, come to consume that which is not of itself. The 2 of them break free from the forest, diving into a clearing, sweating and panting. The elf rolls over, holding a torch out behind herself as if to strike away a clawing hand that was reaching for her from the shadows. Heine and the elf crawl back and rise up to their feet, having made it to another clearing like the one they had stopped at before. "You all right?" asks Heine. "Never been better," replies the elf, rising to her feet and pulling him up. She looks around the area before walking into the open. "We've arrived," she calls out into the clearing. Heine walks around with her, watching the night as a light shoots out of the forest towards them. He turns his head to follow its sharp, crystalline glow. Eilig shoots towards them, latching onto his chest. "Eilig?" asks Heine, confused. "Good job," says Eilig to the elf, who nods. The fairy looks around the forest. "Guess you don't have to share the money with anybody." "Lucky me," replies the elf, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Eilig looks back his way. "Are you all right?" she asks. The fairy lets go of him and buzzes around him, looking him over and carefully examining every scuff and mark he has on him. "You're okay, right?" "Eilig, what the hell?" asks Heine. "What are you doing out here? What is this?" Eilig flies up to his face, planting a finger against his nose as she hovers there. "I told you, dummy. Your big sister Eilig is going to take care of you," says the fairy. "I knew this day would come eventually, so I've been saving up every coin I made and then some," she explains. "Those fucking gods have their games that they're lost in against each other, but they're not taking my brother from me like he's some figurine on a board." Heine holds out his hand, letting her land in it. "Your head's cleared up now, right?" she asks, waving a hand in front of his eyes. "You're not thinking about that stupid owl anymore, right?" "Eilig," says Heine, "we talked about this." "Like shit we did," yells Eilig at him, a glare in her eyes. "We didn't talk about crap. It was your owl-poisoned brain talking to me, not you," explains the fairy. "Listen, this is our only chance to get you where you really belong," she says. "Where I belong is home, Eilig," says Heine. He lifts his hand, lowering his forehead to very gently rest it against her head. "With you and with Obscura," says the man. "That's the only place I'm going. I was worried about you." A small hand presses it against his face. "You listen to me, you brat," says Eilig quietly. "You don't belong here. This is wrong. This is all wrong. All of this from the day our family died to now is not what was supposed to have happened." Heine sighs, pulling his hand back. "There you go with the cryptic talk again. I was just talking to the frog god about this crap, you know," he says. "Why can't anyone just tell me in one single sentence what the big deal is?" he asks, looking at Eilig, who rubs her arm. "I know you promised some weird, obscure promise to keep something about my past a secret, but I'm here to make sure you're safe and happy," says Eilig. "I'm your sister, asshole, so let me do my job." Eilig flies up into the air. "We have to go," she says. We don't have long before blood splatters strike Heine's face. He recoils, turning his head to look at the last elf, the silver-haired woman, as she falls down, holding a hand over her neck that streams with blood. She dies. Standing behind her, hovering in the air, is a tawny-robed figure who shakes off her talons, getting the combined blood of 7 elves off of her fingers. Heine looks at Obscura, his heart beating in his chest a little stronger than usual. He lifts a hand, reaching out for her. Eilig flies between him and Obscura. "It's over," yells the fairy. "I'm cutting in between you and the damn frog," says Eilig, cold ice growing around her fingers. "You can't keep this charade going forever," she points at the owl god. Obscura clicks with her mouth, holding out her arms. "Hi tilde ni tilde ni tilde," she hoots. "Obscura has come for you," says the owl god, stepping towards them, entirely ignoring Eilig. "You are well, yes, unharmed?" she asks. "Obscura's precious treasure." Eilig swipes her hand up. A wall of crystalline ice shoots out of the ground, cutting off the tip of one of Obscura's talons. The owl god shrieks and the night erupts into shadows. "Eilig," barks Heine, grabbing the fairy out of the air. She looks his way from out of his fist. 5, yells Eilig at him. This isn't real, none of it is, asshole. 5 doesn't stand for demon. It's everything goes dark. Chapter 132. The call of many voices reaches the dusty Heine man of days past what is 3. A number, yes. Sure, it represents the owl, yes. That much is clear. But what else lies behind it? The gods and numerology are tightly tied to one another. They're as inseparable from one another as are the stars from the night sky. This is simply the nature of a god's magic, that it influences the world around them, and this includes the pattern-recognizing entities that are people. Or rather, it is the other way around. Barring the oldest, most primal gods of the world, the newer gods were created by people by their beliefs and fears coming together as a collective thought form, manifesting itself onto the physical world as something living. So what ties the owl to the number 3? Well, it's simple. It's stupidly simple, in fact. It is simply the fact that the word owl has 3 letters. This is the same concept that ties the big frog, the frog god Nikia, to the number 4. Frog has 4 letters. Given that the new gods are direct results of the sum total of people's beliefs, it's only natural that they, too, take on the strange, fully nonsensical quirks of the people who progenited them. After all, people are strange, nonsensical creatures. Then what of the number 5? In the journal from the woman who raised him, his stepmother, it was attributed to the word demon. This makes sense, of course, given that she was on the run from the south, from the old owl god, an entity that regularly ate humans and other such things. But does it really make sense? How can one entity have 2 numbers attributed to itself, 3 and also 5? It doesn't add up in the followings of this nonsensical logic. It seems like a fix, like a smear of fresh ink to cover up a messy splotch on a canvas. There's something bigger here, something that he's been missing for a long time now, and it's been in front of his face all the while. There are so many various things to consider. Heine looks around the area, trying to orient himself in his thoughts. What happened? The man blinks. He's standing in the middle of the corridor upstairs in the old house. The hell, mutters Heine, rubbing his fuzzy head. What was he doing up here again? The man looks around himself, feeling like he's forgetting something. It's that sensation when you walk into a room with an exact purpose, but as soon as you cross the threshold, you forget what it is. Upstairs. What was he going to do upstairs? His eyes wander to the window in the corridor, looking out of its glassy pane. It's bright outside, not bright in the sense that it is the middle of the afternoon, but rather it is bright in the sense that tonight the night sky is a glowing ocean, carrying in itself the resplendent body of the full moon. Ah, right. If he's out here in the corridor, that means it's probably time for him to get down to the forge and get to work. Heine shakes his head, quietly laughing to himself about getting old as he pulls open the door to the stairwell. Ribbit Tilda says a small frog standing on the railing of the staircase. Heine blinks, rubbing his eyes. A frog? Why is there a frog in his house? He looks again. The frog is gone. Confused, the man looks around himself and then leans down over the railing, looking where it could have gone. Did it fall? But he doesn't see anything. Weird. Wait. Frogs, mutters Heine beneath his breath. Why are there frogs in the house? Something hisses behind him. Everything goes dark. Heine sits down on his knees, holding a rag in his hand, and scrubs the floor of the washroom. He sighs in relief, finally ready to call this day done with. It was a long one. He was in the forge all night, and then he had to wipe down this place because why? Heine stops, staring at the polished tiles beneath himself. His distorted reflection looks back his way. Why the hell is he doing all of this? He lifts up the rag, looking at it and then around at the bathing area that he has spent hours cleaning now. But why? He's the only one here. He's the only one who uses the bath. He lives alone. It's just him, ever since he got back from the orphanage. The man sighs, rising to his feet. He drops the dirty rag, obscuring his reflection with it, and then turns to leave, sparing a glance to look at the bathwater. There's a frog swimming in it. Heine stands there, perplexed. After a moment, he wanders over towards the bath, leaning in to look at the creature. A frog. How the hell did a frog get into the house, let alone all the way to the bath? Did it maybe come in through the water system? He leans over forward, grasping the edge of the bath. Something shoves him from behind into the water. Everything goes dark. Heine stands in the library. He doesn't come in here much. After all, what for? Sure, reading would be a great way to pass the time, but he doesn't really care about that or about books. Besides, this place is such a dusty, forgotten mess that he'd be hesitant to even begin to touch any of the tomes here. He's sure they would crumble into dust if he even looks at them wrong. The man tilts his head. What the hell am I doing here? He asks, confused. He rubs his eyes, trying to think. Why did he want to come to the library again? It's all kind of a blurry jumble, but this isn't too unusual. Ever since he got back home from the orphanage, he's just kind of been existing. He doesn't really think much or do much. He just sort of drifts on through life, day after day after day. Once in a while, he'll make a sword to be able to buy some bread, and then he'll sit by the window and stare. The window. Why is he in the library when he could be at his favorite window? Heine sighs and turns to leave. Something wet drops onto the top of his head from up on a high shelf. The man jumps in surprise, swearing up a storm as he looks at the damp frog that lands down on the carpeted floors from his head. Very confused now, Heine looks around the library and then down at the frog. A book falls from the top of a shelf, crushing it flat. Heine pulls back, disgusted at the wet crunching noise that splatters out together with so much blood. His eyes look up just in time to see the shelf cascading down on top of him. Everything goes dark. The man exhales, sitting on his bench. His eyes wander out of the window of the restaurant. He's sitting at his favorite spot in the whole world. It's the little bench right next to the window in the back. It offers a good angle to look out at the people walking by. But because of the way the building is situated, they have a harder time looking back inside at him, which makes it an ideal place for someone like him to just stay and watch the world go by. He watches people walk by in their groups. He watches adventurers walk by in their parties of 2 to 6 people each. He watches partners walk by, hand in hand. He watches families stroll down the street. As he does all of these things, he sits there with folded hands, doing his best to not realize that he is pretending to hold someone else's. He sits here every day alone. He watches the world with hungry eyes every day alone. This is all that there is for him. It's all that the world has in store for the man called Heine. His eyes drift away from the glass for a moment, wandering over the surfaces of many tables that are covered in layers of ash and dust, nearly a decade old. He couldn't be bothered to clean them when he got back from the orphanage. He just sort of left it all like it was when he left when they died his family. He killed them. Heine looks back out of the window. He doesn't like to think about that day for obvious reasons. He regrets what he did, but he understands why he did it. After all, after what his parents had brought to their door to him. How could he, as a child, frightened, confused, and overwhelmed with an abundance of magic, react any differently? How could he have done anything else when his mother and his father had brought a frog sits outside just next to him, its face squished against the window? Ribbit Tilda croaks the frog. He rubs his eyes. "Hey, I got that ledger you wanted," says a voice from next to him. "Lined em up just like you asked." "Holy hell!" yells Heine as she speaks, jumping up to his feet as some strange elf walks past his table, past him, inside of his house where he lives alone by himself. He fumbles around, grabbing the collars of his coat to lift them up to cover his face so that she can't see his scarred face. She looks at him, confused. "You good?" asks the woman, wiping a dusty blonde bang out of her face. She sets down a sheet of paper and slides it his way. "Take a nap, boss man, you look like shit," says the elf. Who the hell are why? Heine stops, looking to his side, down at the piece of paper that she slid towards him. His hand grabs it and he picks it up to look at a list of names, the very first one being his own. The glass of the window violently shatters. Everything goes dark. Thuk thuk thuk. Heine stops, exhaling. The man wipes his brow, getting off the sweat that is beginning to form on him, even if it is the middle of the night and he is out in the forest. Cutting wood is hard work after all. The man looks at his axe and then at the log that he's cutting. It doesn't make much sense to do it like this, honestly. An axe is a horrible tool to cut a lying log with. What he needs is a saw, but he doesn't have a saw, he has an axe. Even if he were so inclined to get a saw, where would he even do that? At the saw store? And what if there are different kinds of saws? He'd have to go there. He'd have to talk to people and ask questions, all so that he could get a stupid saw. No, it's fine this way. It's harder and worse, but it's fine this way. This is how his life is. This is what it has to be. He continues his chopping. Thuk thuk hu Tilda calls a voice above his head in the darkness. Heine stops, looking up at the crown of the tree that he's beneath. There, sitting on a very high branch all by itself, is an owl. Hu Tilda calls the owl out into the night. Heine, with bated breath, follows the echo of its call as it vanishes into the dark of the forest, tensely waiting for a response. But none ever comes. He can't help but smile a sad smile as he looks back at the bird. I know the feeling, says Heine. With wide eyes, the owl stares his way for a moment as if shocked that someone had spoken to it and then hastily vanishes, flying away into the darkness. Ah, he reaches after it. Shit, mutters the man. He didn't want to scare it off. Heine sighs, shaking his head. He lifts his axe, getting ready to return to his work, now that he is all by himself again, as is the norm. He holds the axe up in the air and then stops. After a strange moment of being frozen for no reason at all, Heine turns his head, making sure that he is alone before he, for a reason that he can't really coherently explain, decides to mimic the call of the owl. Hoo, Ribbit, interrupts a frog. Heine startles together, jumping a step back as he looks down at the log where a damp frog sits, having interrupted his call. Something screams in the darkness with a shrill, piercing harpy screech. A silhouette shoots down past his eyes, ripping the frog off of the log and into the night. He stands there perplexed. Nature is weird. After a moment of nothingness that follows, the man shrugs and just returns to his chopping. Life is just like that sometimes. Chapter 133. Heavy hangs the shadow of the truth over wet hearts. Heine floats in a place that is rather indistinct. You will stop this game, hisses a voice greedily in the darkness. Heine is mine. Obscura. Someone laughs playfully off from the other end of the void that he finds himself inside of. As if that's what you care about. I had him first. I've always had him first, explains the voice belonging to the frog god. He's my brother. You just want him to get to me. Heine looks around at the void that he is in. It's just empty blackness with some things floating around here and there. There are some pieces of furniture and some scraps of metal, a door and some bricks, oddities like that. But nothing is coherent. This seems to be some sort of odd dimensional plane created by the gods and their magic, akin to the ones he had been in several times before. Reality is very hard to keep track of these days. Well, here I am, finishes Nikia. That is a filthy frog lie, hisses the owl god. You will not poison Heine's heart with your foul frog waters. Oh, asks Nikia. But poisoning his mind is okay then. There's a loud crash above his head, and Heine looks as the void erupts into a violent explosion of colors near the top, as two forces collide against each other. Just checking, laughs the frog god. Heine looks at the floating door in front of himself and grabs the handle, pulling it open. Despite the fact that he can quite literally see past the door, as there are no walls of any kind in the void, inside of the door is another room. He looks up one more time and then steps in through the opening, trying to orient himself in body and soul. Rhine stands before him. Hey, says Rhine, lifting a hand. Hey, replies Heine, looking around at the void that is taking on the shape of the old house in the old city again. But it's loose and disheveled, the walls float roughly in the right places, but with gaps between them, through which the ink of nothingness remains visible. He remembers who Rhine is, but he's pretty sure this isn't the real Rhine. You fake, asks the boy. He points at himself with his thumb. This here is the real Rhine, the river wizard, he proclaims proudly, a smug smile on his face. Heine blinks and then looks down. He points at the Rhine's foot. Boy, I don't know how to tell you this, but you forgot your box. Rhine looks down at the spot where his foot hangs up in the air but finds nothing to press itself down onto. The real Rhine wouldn't have made that mistake. Ah, crap, mutters the blue-haired boy. I'm not real, he asks, looking up at Heine with a confused gaze on his face. Heine consolingly puts a hand on Rhine's shoulder and keeps walking. Sorry, champ, we all have this moment once in life. This one was yours. Rhine sighs and then runs after him. The sky above their heads roars with thunder as two primal energies collide with one another, locked in a fight that neither of the two of them down below can perceive. They're really going at it, says Rhine. Heine nods and keeps walking. Yup. Should we be worried? Rhine walks next to him. I mean, you know, because of the owl god, he points at the sky. Shouldn't we help her, he asks. I mean, you know, with her being your wife and all. Also about that, cut me some slack, Rhine, says Heine, stopping him. How the hell do you expect me to help her fight a literal god, he asks, pointing at the abstract, ethereal void that they're in. I can't even see them. Rhine thinks for a while. Well, you know how god magic is, says the boy. Fucky, replies Rhine, nodding. I bet if you go through wherever this is, you'll come out somewhere. Rhine nods his head toward the corridor of doors around them. Heine looks at the doors. Which one do I take? Rhine shrugs. So, you're not mad about the idea that maybe you've been mind-controlled into this life by the owl god the same way that the frog god was trying to do? Heine sighs, rubbing the back of his head. It's a confusing question, but why is it confusing? If it is true that their relationship was built up on an entirely false foundation, a lie that spanned the entire thing from start to finish, then by all accounts, he should be furious and heartbroken. But he's just kind of in the moment and blank, really. Heine shrugs. Rhine, I know we chatted here and there, but maybe when I get back to the real you, we should have the talk, says Heine. You're getting to about that age where you'll have these kinds of specific problems. You mean women fighting each other to the death to be the first one to gaslight me into a relationship? Asks Rhine. Heine stops, standing there for a moment. He looks back at Rhine. Yeah, if you keep your looks and confidence, probably. Rhine waves him off. That's okay, I already know about all that stuff, he says. Sokol says that I need to learn how the world works because I'm a sheltered crybaby mama's boy who's gonna get eaten alive without her. Heine lifts an eyebrow. Ah, right. Good old reliable Sokol, says the man. Great, it would have been awkward if I had to do it. But I still want to know how you know, Rhine points at the sky where the gods are fighting each other. Come home to roost, like how does it work? Don't owls have a cloaca? He walks after Heine. And I mean when she's transformed into a person, what does she have? Owl pieces or human pieces? Asks Rhine. Heine looks at him and grabs the handle of a door. Boy. What happens between you and someone else stays in the bedroom, you hear me? He asks. It's about mutual respect. Oh, Sokol said that too, says Rhine, shrugging. Heine opens the door. What the hell is she teaching you? Not allowed to tell you. Life stuff, replies Rhine. Heine sighs and pulls open the door. It's door number 5. Sokol stands there. I'll take it from here, twerp, says the elf. Okay, see you guys later, says Rhine. I'm gonna, he looks at the void. Hey. Will I stop existing if you leave? Yeah, probably, replies Heine. Not existing isn't so bad, though, he explains. I did it all the time before I was born. Oh, nice, Rhine shrugs. Okay, bye. See you on the other side, Rhine, says Heine, stepping through the door. The man stands inside of the old adventurers' guild, the one that had belonged to the frogs. The walls, the floors, and all of the furniture are incoherent and jumbled. The sky crashes above their heads as the gods continue to fight and to argue. I bet that even if you could kill me, says Nikia, the frog god, you just drop behind me like a sack of rocks. There's a loud clashing. I gave up my body for him, my life, she says. You don't have any skin in the game. Heine is my chosen, hisses a voice. Obscura's heart is at stake. It is not something that you would understand, frog. A series of violent explosions ring out. Sokol whistles, elbowing him. Look at you, boss man, says Sokol. She walks through the small door to the space behind the counter and pulls out a cart, used to carry food and drinks around the guild by the waiting staff. To think that the stuttery, sweaty mess who always came to me was such a ladies' man. Sokol tusks, shaking her head. Shameful. With a swipe of her arm, she throws everything off of it and then gracelessly lays herself over it, stomach first, with her legs and arms dangling off of opposite sides as if she were a sack of tubers. Really? Asks Heine. What? Asks Sokol. It's nostalgic. Little old defenseless me being carried off into the night by a mysterious brute. Heine sighs, grabbing the cart. Rein it in, he says. First of all, I'm engaged. Secondly, you're not the real Sokol. And thirdly, asks Sokol. Hell if I know, replies Heine. Fuck it. Thirdly, it would be weird, right? He asks, looking at her head dangling off the side of the cart. She shrugs. I feel like it would be weird. We're business only. Guess so, replies Sokol. She stretches herself a bit and then yawns. Plus it would be super strange with your wife here and all. Is this some messed up thing that I have in my subconscious? He asks, looking at Sokol, who is still laid over the cart. Don't ask me, boss man, I just run the numbers. Do you want it to be? She asks. Okay, don't make this worse than it is, replies Heine, carting her down the hallway. Sokol rolls her eyes, turning her head to watch where they're going. We're all human here, she says. The elf reaches over into a shelf they pass by, pulling out a ledger from it. So the South, eh? She asks. I told you it was a bunch of wobbly-woo. Look where we ended up. I get why you like books and numbers now, says Heine. Living down in the deep forest in nature all of your life must be hell. You have no idea, replies Sokol, flipping through the pages of the ledger. Did you get that note that I passed you? Sure did, replies Heine, remembering the list of names he had gotten in his last session of memories just before. I think I lost it though. Did you figure it out? She asks, tilting her head. Sure did, repeats Heine, nodding to her. I mean, it was literally spelled out for me. She smiles. Funny business, huh? Asks Sokol. How life can spin around on you like that, right? The elf pulls out a page from the ledger and then tosses the rest of the book over her shoulder into the void. Speaking of business, begins Heine. Who are you really working for, Sokol? He asks. You've been gaming me from the start just like them, says Heine, pointing at the sky that is erupting in chaotic violence. Sokol rolls around onto her back. She folds her legs in together and then rotates so that her head is between his hands as he pushes the cart. The elf lifts her arms, grabbing onto his elbows as she looks up his way. Come on, Tilda, coos Sokol. You know that your Auntie Sokol only wants the best for you. You work for it, don't you? He asks, looking at her. She lifts a hand from his arm and holds it to her lips, blowing softly past it. You gonna make me talk? Okay, wow. I had no idea this was a thing I had in my brain. Weird. Just nature, boss man, says Sokol, shrugging. Happens when people break up. It's called a rebound. The aftermath gets rough. Obscura and I are not breaking up, says Heine, stopping the cart. Sokol tilts her head, staring at him as he stands there, physically staring at her, but his mind is elsewhere. If it is true, if he has really been faked into living this life together with the owl god, then what does that mean about everything? Can this be fixed? Does he want it to be fixed? How does he feel about all of this? Heine rubs his chest, wondering, but he doesn't feel anything. He's just blank. God magic, says Sokol. He blinks, looking back at her. You're being emotionally numbed by God magic, explains the elf. Why do you think you dragged us to a literal war zone without second thoughts? She shrugs. I wanted to retire. This isn't what I imagined at all. Yeah, says Heine. I wanted to live. He looks around the area. This isn't what I imagined either. He pushes the cart towards the end of the hall. There is a big hole in the floor rather than another door leading anywhere. There's another way, you know, asks Sokol. Forget the owl, forget the frog, just put your faith in little old Sokol. Have I ever let you down? You haven't, ever, says Heine. God's bless you, Sokol. I'd be lost without you. But now that it's coming down for you to either deliver me to your client or for you to maybe do what you really think is best for me, it's hard to say. I just can't tell what you really want to happen. He shakes his head. Is this all a con for the sake of your gig, or do you really like us? I told you the big secret about the names, didn't I? Asks Sokol. You did, concedes Heine, thinking back to the list again. Would I have done that if I had bad intentions? She asks. Well, considering that you aren't the real Sokol and that my own mind is filled with self-loathing. Yeah, maybe, actually, replies Heine. I've been betrayed a lot today, you understand. Sokol shrugs. Fair. The elf sighs and spins around, sitting upright. She hands him the piece of paper that she had taken from the ledger before. I think you'll want this, she says, looking over her shoulder towards the pit. You know who's next? Eilig, guesses Heine, looking down at the page. It's the same exact note he had before. Sokol smiles, patting a hand against his chest. How did you guess that? A little bird told me, sighs the man, looking down at the black hole in the floor that icy cold vapors rise up out of. Sokol, he looks down at her. I know you aren't real, but whatever the hell happens after this, you take care of Rhine, says the man as he steps past the cart, leaving her behind on top of it. No worries, says Sokol. It's already in the contract. She nods to him. Heine looks at the page in his hand and then at the hole and then steps down into it. Icy vapors surround him. Chapter 134. A vision of the past unravels within cold vapors. No feathers keep the Heine man warm. It's the right thing to do, says the woman's voice. You don't understand Vhat it was like down there. You don't understand Vhat would happen to him if it ever finds him. Heine recognizes it as belonging to his stepmother, the woman who had raised him. What? Corrects the man, catching her accent slip on the word. It's dangerous for her if it does. People have to assume she's just a human like any other. They're far away from the South and her escape was years and years ago, but still it matters. Their safety, her safety, the boy's safety, it all matters. What? She repeats, saying the word again, this time without her accent. The woman then blinks, staring off into the distance for a time with a dreamy gaze before shaking her head and looking back his way. I understand that you think that, says her husband, Heine's stepfather. But do you really think that this is right? He asks. He's safe here with me, promises the man. He places a hand on her shoulder. You're safe here with me. The woman places a hand on his chest, looking into his eyes. You are a fool and I love you for it, she says, smiling. But you are a man. Human, she shakes her head. Do not underestimate the shadow that we live under. I can take on some fluffy bird god, says Heine's stepfather. You cannot, idiot, replies the woman. The man sighs, lowering his head. You really think we're not safe after all of these years? She places a finger between her eyes and then presses it between his. It never forgets, she says. You do not grasp the nature of the gods of the deep world. It is not just an owl. Forgets, corrects the man. Forgets, she repeats, catching her accent. Listen to me. It is out there, she promises, pointing to the darkened, shuttered windows of the room. Every day, every night, it is out there searching. She shakes her head. Every second, thousands of eyes watch every drifting shadow for one that looks just like him, just like Ninny. It will never stop. But after all these years, we've been here, we've been safe. Why now? Asks her husband. What's changed? Ninny is growing, says the woman. Eilig saw it, she says, lifting a hand that a blue blob lands on. His magic is developing. He's coming into that age now. Really? Asks the man, a prideful look welling in his eyes. Is it strong? That is not the point, you proud fool, replies the woman. Fool, fool, repeats the elven woman with the cut ears. It is worse than that, it is distinct. It carries on from his blood father. Ash, asks the man. Ash, she repeats. You know what this means, she explains. We cannot hide him from the world. Ash is too rare. Word will spread. They will find him. It will find him. But she shakes head and then rests it against his chest for a while. Eilig, will you check on Ninny, please? The blue blob flies out of her hand. After a moment, she looks back up towards her husband. I understand your pain, says the woman. You are and will always remain his father, and I will stay here with you forever, she promises. But the safest place for him now is not with us. It is with his blood father. Isn't this dangerous? Asks the man. You killed the boy's mother. It vas a different time, she yells at him and then turns her head away. I vas a different person, she says, holding a fist lightly in front of her chest as she looks down at the floor. I regret it, but I also would do it again if it meant I could have my Ninny. Was, he corrects. And maybe that isn't what you should lead with when you contact him. Was, she repeats and then shakes her head. I have already reached out. What? He asks, looking at her in surprise. Forgive me for not telling you right away. Time is critical, she explains. It was just before now. The scene of the room fades to darkness. Heine stands in the void, looking around himself as snow begins to fall from up above his head, contrasting the total darkness with sharp, crystalline white. Eilig, says Heine, his voice carrying out into the emptiness that begins to form itself together into a scene. Snowflakes land on the ground and pool together, changing color and shape as blobby splotches begin to make up the walls and floor of an old house. I'm here, says a voice from next to him. Heine sighs in relief, holding out a hand for her to land on. Instead, she flies onto his chest and holds him in a small hug, pressing herself against his front with her arms wide at her sides. Heine gently lowers his hand, holding a few fingers against her back. Are you the real Eilig, or are you a fake made by god magic? He asks. Eilig lifts her head, looking up from his coat. Good fucking question, she replies. Are you the real Heine or some fuck made by god magic? Heine looks around at the house that is coming together. Good question, he replies. Eilig climbs up his coat as if it were a mountain to scale before reaching his shoulder where she sits down. Legs dangle down over his front and she leans sideways, resting herself against the side of his face. I think I'm real, she says. We were escaping this damned hellscape when your stalker showed up and stopped us. Eilig looks his way. She killed someone, you saw that right? She asks. Fucking slit her throat, not including the rest of them in the forest. I saw Eilig, says Heine. Do you get me now? Asks Eilig. This isn't normal, says the fairy. He nods, exhaling. When is it ever? Asks the man. Are you finally going to tell me now? He asks. What all of this was? No, replies Eilig. I always keep my promises, says the fairy. She points to the house that has built itself together. But I'm not the one doing this. So I guess I can't stop you from seeing it. Heine looks up towards the sky that continues to clash with lightning as the gods fight in a form that he can't see with his eyes. He reaches into his pocket, pulling out the note that Sokol had given him. Can you at least tell me if this is right? He asks, showing it to her. Eilig looks it over and then awkwardly rubs her arm, turning his way. Yeah, it is, Heine sighs. I thought so. So it goes all the way down, huh? All the way, replies Eilig. A boy runs past him. Heine looks at himself as his younger version runs to the house that has formed out of snowflakes, a thriving, full adventurers guild. The air is filled with music and with dozens of voices. Glassware is clinking and people are running in and out of the structure, carrying all sorts of bits and bobs from various monsters as they either make their way to the guild to sell things or off to the dungeon to earn their keep for the day. The boy slips in through the door, opened by someone leaving, and Heine walks in after him, looking around. He runs past the counter, where a woman is sitting, and heads into the library, cautiously looking around to see if the strict librarian is here. Quietly, the boy creeps towards the shelves on the topic of magic, in the hopes of finding a book to teach him more about what he just did. Soot still covers his tingling fingers. Heine, standing by the door, watches as the boy creeps off. A figure looks around from the side, her long black hair dangling as she narrows her eyes in suspicion. The librarian. She didn't see him sneak in, but she seems to suspect something. "Oh, hey," says Eilig, nudging him. "Watch this." He looks as she points behind the librarian, where a blue splotch flies in secret. The fairy from the past flies into the shelf behind the librarian and knocks out a stack of books, immediately vanishing into a crack between the shelves. The librarian jumps in surprise, likely thinking that she got snagged and pulled the books down herself. Rolling her eyes and quietly muttering to herself, she stops her hunt and picks everything back up. A boy sneaks past them, holding a book against his chest. "See?" asks the fairy on his shoulder. "I might have hated you for stealing my best friend's time," says Eilig. "But Big Sister Eilig always looked out for you, just like now." Heine smiles, vaguely remembering this day and how surprised he was that he didn't get caught. He usually always got caught. He wonders how many other incidents and accidents he was spared from by what was apparently his guardian spirit. Heine's charmed smile turns into a frown. "Hey, asks the man. "You didn't ever secretly watch me do anything weird, right?" Eilig looks his way, but doesn't say anything. "Right?" asks Heine. The scene goes dark and the room rearranges itself into a stairwell. She places a hand on his face and quietly shakes her head. "You wouldn't like the answer." The boy version of Heine sits there, reading and studying up on how to use his newfound magic better. Ash magic is apparently relatively rare, according to this book. It's not the rarest thing ever, but it's pretty sparse. According to this, ash casters are extremely desirable for the military or adventuring lifestyle, but also for agriculture because of their ability to create nourishing material for the soil. It's rare for an ash caster to have a hard time financially. The boy smiles, looking around the house of theirs. It's nice. But he hates this neighborhood. He hates living locked up in this place all day and night. He doesn't get to go to school. Maybe if they had some more money, he could give it to his parents and then they could buy a nicer place. Maybe he could go to school and make friends his own age. "Ninny?" asks a voice. The boy jumps, having not seen his mother or even heard her. She can be very quiet when she wants to be. She sees the book in his hands and then snatches it away, grabbing him as she walks upstairs and yanking him behind her. The scene shifts. They're in the small office upstairs. It's the room that was later turned into Sokkel's bedroom. But for now, it just has some sparse furnishings. The boy frowns, sniffling, having just been severely scolded by his mother, who had a long, severe scolding with him about not using his magic that he just didn't understand. Why shouldn't he use his magic? If he can be of any help finally, other than just doing stupid chores, then it doesn't make any sense. The woman closes the door behind herself, locking it. The boy sits down, leaning back against the wall as he pulls his legs in and sniffles to himself in the oppressive darkness of the space. "I never understood why she was so mean to me about that," says Heine. "Her and the old man," he sighs. "So it was to keep me from using my magic, so that Obscura wouldn't find me. Admittedly, I don't think they handled it well," says Eilig from his shoulder as she points to the crying child, sitting in the shadow of a heavy desk. "But they did their best as the flawed people that they were. Sometimes that looks real ugly from the outside." The sobbing is broken as something rattles down from above, appearing as if it had fallen off of the desk. A small, wooden toy from his own collection from upstairs lands at his feet. The boy sniffles, wiping his eyes on his sleeve as he looks around in confusion, before picking up his toy, having no idea how it got here. The real Heine looks up at the top of the desk, where a blue blob cautiously leans over, looking down at her work. "You big softy," says Heine. "Please," says Eilig. "I just didn't want to listen to your wailing all day." "Sure thing," replies Heine. "Thanks, Eilig," says the man, watching the scene fade away. "That meant a lot to me." Something blows loudly into his ear, causing him to wince. "Yeah, yeah," replies the fairy on his shoulder. "Don't get all sentimental and start crying on me now, or past me's efforts will have been a total waste." "Funny how life can turn around on you like that, huh?" asks Heine, repeating something he heard Sokol tell him before. "Yeah," replies Eilig. The two of them stand there in vague darkness as the scene shifts again. "So when does it come?" he asks. "Not much longer," replies Eilig as the two of them stare into the darkness. Chapter 135. The truthful revelation is shocking to those who are unfamiliar with the smell of barns. Heine and Eilig stand surrounded by darkness, the sky above their heads clashing with the strike of thunder. Both of them look up, watching arcs of energy come to form, only to meet in the center in a series of violent explosions. The darkness above their heads is filled with glowing yellow dots, as if they were the stars in the night sky. Thousands, millions of them span from here to there, watching the fight, watching him. They are eyes. The walls of the illusion begin to come together, forming the hallways, walls, and rooms of a house. "Eilig," asks Heine, looking at Obscura's yellow glowing eyes that fill the rupturing void. "What the hell is she? Fucked in the head?" "Eilig," snaps Heine. The fairy rolls her eyes. "You know how gods get their power?" asks the fairy. Heine nods. "From their worshippers and the people who believe in them," he says. "Right," replies the fairy, as the restaurant from the bottom of the old house builds itself together, tables flying out of the void to set themselves up. "That's also how gods are made. People believe in some weird, kooky bullshit, and all of that spiritual energy collects together into a big, messy ball of power that hoots and eats frogs." She points to the window, outside of which a new darkness hangs, the darkness of a fake night, rather than that of the total void. "People believe in an owl god." "So there's an owl god. Magic." "Sure," replies Heine, stepping to the side as a silhouette emerges from nothing and a full person is created in the illusion. Some random adventurer who is visiting the guild condenses together out of particulate piece by piece, until they are whole of body and going about their business. Others start to form too. "Yeah, well, it's like how the mushroom goddess is also the fertility goddess," asks Eilig. Heine nods. He recalls having a talk about exactly this topic once with Seltsam and then later with Obscura. "Because mushrooms look like dicks?" asks Heine. "You got it, big guy," replies Eilig. "It's a stupid system, but that's how it is because people are stupid. People think that mushrooms look like junk, so they think it's related to fertility. Presto bango, mushrooms and fertility are connected, and so the mushroom goddess gets that load on her shoulders too." Heine snorts. "Metaphorically speaking," says Eilig, elbowing him. "Gross." A waitress walks past them carrying several trays. "What does this have to do with Obscura then?" asks Heine. "What do you associate owls with?" asks Eilig. Heine thinks for a moment, watching as his stepmother and stepfather walk by. "The night?" he asks. "The night," repeats Eilig. "Darkness," she shrugs. "Just like mushrooms and fertility go together, owls and the night are locked together too." "What about bats?" "Bats suck," replies Eilig. "They don't make any noises and they're never around, so people didn't worship them as much as owls," explains the fairy. "But you live in a village by the dark forest. What do you think you hear all night?" she asks. "It sure isn't bats." "Hooting," replies Heine. "Hooting," repeats Eilig. "Congratulations, you're engaged to the feathery embodiment of eternal darkness," says the fairy, shaking her head. Could be worse," replies Heine. Eilig sighs. "You say that, but—" A child protests next to them. Heine turns to look at his own younger self, having been pulled to the side by his step-parents. "It will only be for a little while, Ninny," says his mother. "I promise." "No," argues the boy, hitting his mother's hand away. A hand grabs the child, yanking him to the side. "Boy, you behave," says Heine's stepfather, striking him. "Listen to your mother, pack your things." The scene goes dark. "Good old dad," says Heine. "Like I said," begins Eilig. "I don't agree with his methods, but the man loved you." "Yeah," says Heine. I saw that in the other life, the one that Nikia showed me. Heine sighs as the scene changes. What was that? That was the same thing, replies Eilig. Just another direction. Exactly what the owl god did to you and what it did to you long before that she did too. Do they know? Asks Heine, looking up at the sky where the frog and the owl gods are fighting. About where we really are. Eilig purses her lips and blows out some air. Tough question. The owl maybe because she covered up the 5 thing. The frog, though, I don't think so, which is actually pretty damn funny if you ask me. Her wings buzz next to his ear. Here the two of them are, fighting to change reality to make you fit into their individual vision of it. But the idiots might not even know that the whole foundation beneath their feet is already shaped. She shakes her head. They're changing reality inside of someone's already changed reality. He looks at her for a moment before returning his gaze to the darkness. Why are gods like this? Asks Heine. Why can't they just let life happen? What can I say? Begins Eilig. The ways we're born and raised affect our view of the world. A waitress walks out of the darkness. Heine blinks, looking at her. Claydit, he asks, recognizing his own employee, the dark elf from the other guild. Not real, says Eilig. This is just all part of the big spiel. More boots come from the side. Heine turns his head, looking at their ever-silent Dorm and Erit. Not real, asks Heine. Not real, says Eilig. He's fucky though, I've been keeping an eye on him. Metal clamors behind them, the sound of falling pots and pans raining down as 2 people walk in. They are the cooks from the old house Lutz and liked. Let me guess, says Heine. Eilig nods. Go for it, your big sister believes in you. Not real. Asks Heine. Eilig's wings buzz and she leans to the side, hugging the side of his face. Congratulations. Nice, well no, not really. Heine looks at the faces around him. So do they even exist, down below in the real reality, he asks. Or are they just shadows, just people that exist to fill this very specific mistake in the system, he asks, looking at the note in his hands. You sure do ask a lot of questions, replies Eilig. Hell if I know, maybe, maybe not. I think they're just here for their names, honestly. The fairy lifts her hand. Ice gathers around it. An instant later, jagged shards fly around, cutting through all 4 of the illusionary people who had approached. They vanish into vapors like dispelled shadows. Ah, hell, says Heine. Then what about, excuse me, calls a voice from the side. Excuse me, repeats Seltsam, speaking far too loudly. The 2 of them turn to look as a wall forms out of the darkness that an entity hides behind. Please don't kill me. I have to finish sorting the H section. Seltsam, says Heine. Eilig, if these names are right, he asks, pointing at the sheet of paper in his hand. Then how do we know that any of us are real? How do we know that you and I even exist for real in the real world? We don't know that, replies Eilig. But what the hell else are we gonna do, she asks. I'm tired of watching you smooch a bird and we're stuck here now. If this is the alternative, says Heine. I think I made the right call. That's because you're dumb, replies Eilig. Don't worry, that's why I'm here to look out for you, Heine nods. Maybe we should look around the forest while we're here in the south, Eilig, suggests the man Heine. We'll find you a nice fairy to date. Eilig seems to be biting his cheek. That's a no, the scene changes. I think this is it, says Eilig, pulling back and looking around the area. Heine exhales, looking around as the room comes together. Don't look, yells a voice from the side, the fake Seltsam. A person runs over, scrambling in between the newly rising walls before she's closed out on the other side. Heine, out of politeness, doesn't look as she scrambles behind his back, her fingers clutching the back of his shirt. What's the matter? Asks Heine, watching the room come together, afraid of not existing. I don't want to be alone again, exclaims Seltsam. Oh, fair, replies Heine. You're good here, Seltsam. Even if you aren't the real one, he says, lifting a hand over his other shoulder to pat the fingers clutching his back. The room comes together once more, taking the shape of the restaurant in the old adventurers' guild, but now at a different hour. Heine feels something tugging on the note in his hand from behind, and he lets go, letting Seltsam take it. Oh yeah, that makes sense, says the librarian, reading what's written on it. But weird. I mean, I could have told you about this from the get-go, she says, if you asked me. What? Asks Heine. Sure, she replies, giving him the note back. Don't you remember? Asks the librarian. I told you a bunch of times that somebody came by the library wanting 5 pages transcribed on extinct animals. She shakes her head. They all got outbred by Ankas, and after the god of their species disappeared, they just kind of vanished, you know. The room is finished. Heine as a child, with his step-parents on either side of him, holding a hand on each of his shoulders, all stand and wait by the front door. The young boy sniffles, doing his best to maintain a strong, stiff posture. His father pats him on the shoulder in approval. There is a knock on the front door. The man and the woman look at each other and nod. Heine, says his father, you behave and you do exactly as you were told. The boy sniffles and nods, his stepmother leaning down against him to hold her lips to the top of his head, closing her eyes, kissing him goodbye and imparting the smell of the large, extravagant water lily that she's wearing onto his senses. It won't be long. I promise, Ninny, she says. We'll visit you very soon. His stepfather walks to the door. The real Heine exhales, feeling Eilig holding a hand against his cheek. You good? Asks the fairy. I'm okay, replies Heine as he looks at the sheet of paper one final time. When does it happen? His father opens the door. Now, replies Eilig. Red ash, mixed with heat and blood, sprays everywhere as the man by the door is blasted away by powerful magic, leaving nothing behind except red snow that fills the room. His mother screams, pulling him back and running to the door that opens wide. She vanishes right before his eyes as the ash magic hits her next. The young child screams, falling down and crawling back, bloody ashes sticking to the floor and to his face. Pieces of his disintegrated mother and father are stuck in his eyes and his mouth. Thunderous, loud, crashing steps come into the house as a monstrous, gigantic silhouette blocks out the night beyond the door. The boy screams as a large, hairy creature with a horrifically long face and wide eyes, like a minotaur twisted and grown wrong, looks at him, its head towering above the doorframe as it steps inside on hooved legs. The sheet of paper in Heine's hand crumples, his fingers clenching tightly shut as he stares at the image of the monster that killed his parents, the revelation that has been visible from day one, if one knew where to look. The god down at the base, lowest manipulation of their current reality. H in any obscura arhine s okel e illig k ladet I writ l uts l ikt s eltsum. It moves towards him. The boy covers his face and screams, and the room fills with smoldering ash, consuming both the boy and the horse god as Heine of the past uses his magical powers for the first real time in his life. I don't understand, says the real Heine. Why did you always say it was my fault, Eilig? He asks, smoldering ash flying past them as a torrential storm rages all around the room. Their deaths. A hand rubs his cheek. Sorry, that was part of the owl's illusion to cover up the number 5, says Eilig. I forgot about what 5 really was, so I forgot the horse. That only left you for me to blame for this, she says. I really thought it was you, explains the fairy. I'm sorry. Heine stares into the ash storm that fills the house, watching the blue glimmer surrounding the core of it. Ice constantly surrounds the boy there, regrowing over and over inside the inferno to keep him safe. Layers of it peel away, melting, only for new, fresh magic to come back in order to safekeep the thing nested inside of the ice. The fairy of the past uses all of her magic to keep him as safe as she can in the ash storm, but at a price, as she herself burns and vanishes away into dust, destined to lie in death until the magic of the house, restored, could pull her back from slumber. No, says Heine, shaking his head. Thank you for becoming my sister even if you thought that, says the man as the ash fades. He holds a hand to the side, gently holding her as he presses his face against her. Okay, rein it in, says Eilig, trying to push his palm away. The woman, the fairy, the man, and the horse, all of them are gone. Only a severely burned boy lays there on the ground. Smoldering fires are beginning to burn through the house. The child flops over, spent. That's what I was saying, says Seltsam from behind him. The H-section stuff I mentioned a few times. The 5 pages of an extinct animal. There were a ton of hints. Whatever, good, says Heine, looking at the bones of the horse god. You know what? Fuck horses. I'd do it again too if I had to. Some species deserve to go extinct. The scene fades and the 3 of them stand there. Heine breathes deeply and then lets it out. Well, hell, that explains a lot, but what happens next? He asks, where did I go after this if the orphanage wasn't real? To your dad's place, replies Eilig on his shoulder. What? Asks Heine. Didn't kid me just kill him, he was the horse, right? Are you stupid? Asks Eilig, looking at him. That wasn't him. Do you think that you resemble a horse, idiot? Heine shrugs. I mean, you know, in a very specific way. Eilig covers her ears. Shut up, la 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 la, yells Eilig. Gross, Seltsam giggles behind them. Just saying, replies Heine, shrugging. Besides, not like you didn't know that since you're always watching me. Eilig sways a small hand against his face. That was the hired goon. The horse god was just its version of Sokol. Then wait, who's my dad? Asks Heine, as the world around them begins to whisper, and then it begins to howl. Shadows shift and churn, swirling like stormy waters as the darkness begins to mourn. Cold, distant whispers come to reach his ears, flowing past him like the graceful touches of every person he has ever lost, stroking a hand over him once in passing as they move, ushered towards the ghostly throne that emerges. Ah, fuck me, yells Heine in tired exasperation as he sees the manifestation come into form. Seltsam shrieks from behind him. Ah no, I'm sorry, Seltsam, apologizes Heine for swearing. He knows that she hates swearing, given her nature. This was sort of a thing just now, you know. I understand, replies the voice behind him, gripping his shirt. That magical blood would explain at least why you didn't get frozen when you saw me that one time in the library, right? Ha ha, she laughs, far too loudly. Yeah, replies Heine, looking up toward the god of death who comes into focus in the illusionary realm of the gods that he is inside of. A skeleton leans sideways over an old throne, raggedy clothes and rags covering its unmoving bones. Its face is hollow and empty, and it has no movements at all. It simply lies there like a dead king of a forgotten empire, simply destined to decay on his throne for all eternity. I thought I told you to send a goddamned letter next time, says Heine. Heine, whispers the god in the distance. What? Asks Heine, holding his arms out to his side. Really great, by the way. It's not like we didn't already meet once, says the man. Coulda just told me you gave my mom the old midnight mamba and that I was being mind-controlled in a false goddamned reality. Please stop swearing, says a voice from behind him. Heine stops and then exhales. Sorry, Seltsam, he apologizes again. It's kind of a moment for me, you know. He looks back towards the god of death. What is this? Asks Heine. What is all of this? The world around them falls into shape, taking the form of a great cold temple, with massive pillars that rise up the sky, all hewn out of a loveless, oddly bluish-green stone. War, Weaponsmith Heine, chosen of the owl god, says the god of death, laughing. It has always been about war, child of mine. Chapter 136. Peak Wobblywoo is the summit that the Heine man finds himself atop. Wobblywoo, replies Heine, pointing at the god of death, who sits upon his high throne, distant from the happenings of the world. He takes extra effort not to swear so that he doesn't upset fake Seltsam. What is this? Asks Heine. The air around them shifts, spinning around and around the strange throne room that they're inside of. Vapors of fog drift through the air in sharply elongated trails that seem to have mouths and eyes, neither of which grant sight nor sound to their possessors. "I told you once," replies the god of death, "when you were beckoned, child of mine, that you were best off under my direct behest," explains the god. "I thought you were just being dramatic when you said that whole child of mine thing," replies Heine, shrugging. "I figured because, I have ash magic which is under your domain." The man scratches his head. "I didn't assume that you were being literal." The man stands there with his hand on his hips, staring at the skeletal, unmoving god of death who never leaves or stirs from his throne. Heine stares at the decrepit, mostly fleshless corpse as he tries to understand something. "How did you even, He gestures with his hands. "Your mother was a generous lover," replies the voice from the quivering distance. Gross." "I'm gonna be sick," says Heine, wishing he hadn't asked. "Right," asks Eilig, sitting next to him. "See, this is what I had to deal with all the time watching you." Seltsam giggles from behind them, causing Heine to look over his shoulder at the noise that feels odd for her to make. Seltsam isn't much of a giggler as far as he knows. Eilig leans into his ear. "Sometimes during our girls' nights in the library, we looked at the secret books in the library together," she explains. "She's still kind of new to this stuff, so I've been trying to, familiarize her with the ways of the world." "Wait, secret books?" asks Heine. "I didn't know we had any," whispers the god of death. "What? Oh right," replies the man, looking back towards the literal cosmic embodiment of death who is also apparently his father. He sort of lost track there for a second. "Sorry, getting old, I get distracted now and then," explains Heine. He points back at the throne. "What is this?" The sky above their heads thunders. "War," replies the ghostly entity. "It came as I felt, leaking and dripping through the hearts of men like poison. Nothing moves on the throne, save for the wind that billows the tufts of long, white hair that hang loosely from the skin-taut skull. The whispers of fog around them sharpen, as if pointing at him like a series of accusing fingers. And you, my child, poured it into their blood." "Wobbly-woo," repeats Heine. "Why can't you gods ever just make a straight sentence?" He asks. "It's always poetic gunk." He shakes his head. "I made weapons, so what? There are thousands of weaponsmiths in the nation making weapons for the military." "Yes," replies the man on the throne, "but they are all not of my blood, they are inferior." The fingers point towards him. "Even you, despite being of my blood, have made only inferior weapons." "You watch your mouth," replies Heine. "These were some damn fine pieces. Rhine and I worked our butts off." "They are weapons of the owl god," replies the spirit on the throne. "They carry her quaintness," it explains. "The wind intensifies. Yet none of them carry the true power of death that I have needed you to create, Weaponsmith Heine, chosen of the owl god," it says mockingly. Heine narrows his eyes. "Why do you send the horse?" he asks. "Not a great move, by the way." The wind howls, spirits reaching out and touching his face. "To retrieve what was mine and to make a point of it." "I literally lived in the same city as you, half an hour away. There's no way you didn't already know where I was the whole time," replies Heine. "You could have just picked me up." "Correct," replies the god of death. "But then I wouldn't have made a point of it." "Of what?" asks Heine. "Again, get to the substance of this conversation, or I'm taking my family and leaving." He looks up at the foggy, cloudy sky above their heads. "I have a fight to break up between my wife and a frog who is apparently—" Heine blinks. "Ah, hell." He looks back at the god of death. "She, like you, is of my blood," explains the god, referring to Nakia the big frog. "You and the old lady were really going at it, huh?" asks Heine, looking around himself at the spirits of the dead that circle around them, as if they were trapped in the center of a churning maelstrom. "Why did you never bother going after her?" "Because your sister is irrelevant for my ambitions and my point," explains the god of death. "What I want, Weaponsmith Heine, chosen of the owl god, is death." The ghosts swirl, and despite the fact that the man on the throne never moves, the aura of his presence seems to intensify. I want the people who stole my son to be dead. I want the horse god to be dead. I want the world that I inhabit to be dead. I want every crying, crawling, suckling infant in the world to be dead. The skull, for the first time, moves, turning his way. And I want you to be dead. Only in total, absolute death can everything be exactly as I want it to be. Noted, replies Heine, nodding. But here I am very much not giving a— He stops himself, turning back to look at fake Seltsam for a moment. Heck about it, finishes Heine. But here you are, replies the god, only because I have need of your hands in order to fulfill the rest of my work. That is the only reason you are not dead, together with all of the others who will be soon. Heine lifts his arms. In case you haven't noticed, -1 war, there's a whole world of living people out there, says Heine. Not including the other gods, who will definitely have a problem with your fun idea for the future. They are but flies on the canvas of my masterpiece, explains the god, the wind swirling around them. Very poetic. Can we go? Asks Heine. Death brought the end of the owl god and brought its child to you, leading you to the ways of weaponsmithing. Death, says the god. Death tore your mother from me and birthed the rival that will fight the owl, causing a wave of death. Death brought you from nothingness and made you into a man of minuscule, but at least some, value. The fog encroaches on them. And yet here you are, still not seeming to grasp the weight of the situation. Weaponsmith Heine, chosen of the owl god, says the god of death. This world that we live in is of my own creation. It is a world of death, painted black from the festering ink of my well. At least I think I know what your favorite word is, says Heine, stepping forward towards the throne. This is a game that I have made. You are but a piece that I move at my own behest. Gotcha, says Heine, nonplussed. Again, though, can you just nail it down in like 2 sentences, he asks. I'm not that smart, you know. That's why I have people to be smart for me. The hacking, hoarse voice up from the throne laughs, coughing as if it belonged to a dying man. You are like her, your mother, says the spirit. She was a headstrong fool, too. No, replies Heine. My mom was a harsh woman, but sharp as a tack. He shakes his head and looks around the fog for any spirit that strikes him as familiar. Bless her soul, wherever that woman is who gave birth to me, says Heine. But the woman who raised me and who you killed is my mother, and my dad is one of these ghosts here, presumably. Not you. Eilig holds a hand against the side of his face. I killed both of your mothers and will kill both of your fathers, says the god of death. When all spirits have gone quiet, then I too will stop, and there will simply be full nothingness forever. You could also just not do that, suggests Heine. Life is fun, you know. Maybe you should get up and try dating again, old man. It'd do you some good. Heine plants a finger into his palm, tapping it. What do you want? I want you to kill everything, everyone, and I want you to turn it all into ash. Heine gestures broadly at everything. Yeah, I bet you do, but you know, no, replies the man. Getting married soon, you know. I'd invite you to the ceremony, but you're kind of a downer, honestly. The foggy vapors leak towards him. I wonder if you will feel the same when I take back what is mine, says the voice. What, me? Go for it, old man, blow up your own plan. It's okay, says a voice from next to his ear. Eilig gets up, and he feels a soft kiss press itself against the top side of his head. I was expecting this. The vapors of mist grab hold of Eilig, pulling her away, her body becoming translucent and vague slowly as she drifts off into the fog. Heine grabs for her, but his fingers simply move through her, as if she were a ghost. Eilig, calls Heine, swiping after her. It's okay, repeats the fairy, holding out a hand as she drifts away towards the foggy wall that he can't move past. Your big sis has to go do something, don't worry. Give her back, yells Heine, pressing a hand into the fog, but it simply thrusts his arm back out. You killed her before, says the god. You saw it, and yet she returned to you. Are you not curious in the least? Asks the entity. After her death, I promised her return on the basis that she guides and nurtures you towards my will. But it seems that my faith in her was misplaced, like it was in so many others. Heine's mind races. Didn't Eilig return to life because of the returned magic of the old house? It's true that he killed her as a child during his eruption, but wait, is this who she promised to never tell him anything? The god of death. Eilig was in on it from the start too. The man snaps his fingers. Nothing happens. That won't work here, says the god. Now go back to the world and do as I will tell you to do, orders the entity. And then perhaps I will give you a token prize for your participation, child. Heine narrows his eyes, charging toward the fog a second time, only to be thrown back. In frustration, he snaps his fingers, waiting for a spark to come out, but none ever do. Eilig, shouts Heine as the fairy fully vanishes into the mist. The skull returns to its original position. Go. Weaponsmith Heine, chosen of the owl god, says the entity mockingly. You will leave here and return to your illusion, and you will finish the work that I have for you, this time with more zeal, orders the god. I will no longer tolerate these childish tokens of war such as swords and axes. His vision begins to become blurry as the realm of the dead slowly fades away as he leaves, as he is returned out of the god's realm and back to the mortal coil. A hand moves down onto his shoulder as someone from behind him whispers into his ear. Seltsam. Do it a third time, she says, holding him upright. Remember, she asks, her voice echoing. 1, 2, 3, chants the librarian behind him, sounding embarrassed as she counts. She laughs awkwardly. Heine blinks as everything goes dark. Oh, right. A single snap of his fingers reverberates, the echo cascading down the empty, infinite halls of non-existence. For a time, nothing happens. The repetition travels down long, distant corridors that the eyes of the living are simply unable to comprehend, bouncing and resounding around the various corners of the ends of life. And then, after a moment, the total darkness is broken by a yellow glow and eye. First there's one, then there are two, and there are far too many to count, each appearing after the other with every snap of the finger that travels along towards total nothingness. Eyes fill the void like stars in the sky, re-illuminating the fading darkness from one end of eternity to the other. The spell over him breaks. The fading spell of the god of death falters as the god atop his high throne sits now beneath a heavy, all-blanketing night sky that is full of nothing but an ocean of endlessly glowing eyes amongst the hissing void as the owl god enters the arena. Chapter 137. 10,000 fingers snap to signal the breaking of the dark spell. Thousands of eyes fill every span of lightlessness from here to as far as his eyes can manage to see in this strange, illusionary plane that he is on. Heine wobbles, rising to his feet as he looks behind him. The fake Seltsam is gone. The illusion, forced into being by so many various violent collisions of godly magic, is beginning to come undone. The man makes a note to grovel at the librarian's feet when he gets out of here. Each of the yellow eyes tears open just a little wide, the edges of each ripping apart the fabric of total darkness as if they were hands, tearing holes into black fabric. Obscura, calls Heine up to the thousands of stars that fill the night, already knowing that she sees him. A raspy, hoarse laughter comes from the distance as the god of death sits on his throne, his white strands of hair blowing in the wind. Pitiful, says the entity. The wind howls, the millions of spirits of the dead who fill the endless nothingness around them, wailing in torment as they fly around in the endless maelstrom. The skeletal god lifts a finger and then, an instant later, masses of dead shoot upward, blasting into hundreds of the eyes, covering them in darkness. Owls, stars, begins the god of death. Both are simply things that will die out and return to nothingness. Everything dies and returns to nothingness. Heine rushes forward, but he can't move past the barrier that holds him away from the god. No matter how often he runs towards the throne, he just feels like he's always at the exact same spot. The man hisses, holding his hands up past his face to block the wind as more and more of stars fall dark. A hand grabs his shoulder, strong and firm. Heine looks behind himself in surprise, seeing Rhine standing there. "Rhine," the boy winks. "That's Rhine River Wizard," he starts. "Don't forget it," says the young man, stepping forward and holding his hands out in front of himself, his azure strands of hair flowing wildly in the tempest like waves on the ocean's surface. His boots stand firmly, spread strong and stable without a box of any kind to be seen as he holds a trained, competent posture. Rhine has used sustained cascade, a massive cylindrical stream, an eruption of water blasts out of Rhine's hands, tearing through the veil with violent force. Heine looks, watching as the barrier of the god of death begins to open. "Rhine, what the hell?" "It's magical resonance, remember?" asks the boy, raising his voice and focusing. "We talked about it in the forge." "Go," says Rhine. Heine nods, looking at Rhine with pride as he turns, sprinting forward into the gap, running through a hollow spiral of water that rages around him, making a clear way all the way through. The ghosts creep in on all sides, moving in through the gaps of the spell, collecting together into a new shape, that of a large creature on two legs with a long, hideous face. The ghost-like horse stands there with a wide and ready stance before charging straight towards him from the other end of the tunnel. "Duck!" yells a voice from the back. Heine throws himself to the ground and then scrambles forward, continuing to run, listening as a sharp whistling shoots over his head as three knives fly into the ghost's neck with pinpoint precision, causing it to falter, and then fade away into vapors that return to the mist. The man scrambles, running through the veil, past thousands of reaching hands and wailing faces that drift towards him, trying to grab hold of him, trying to pull him into the endless ocean of souls that they exist in. The staircase comes up before him, with water surging everywhere all around him. Ghosts appear before him, blocking the way at the last meter. Heine narrows his eyes, running forward straight towards them without stopping. The old person that he was, the person who had awoken in that old house by himself all of that time ago, would have faltered and fallen short here long since. He would have given in to the depths of his resolute, deep hopelessness, simply accepting that he would simply die alone as he lived. But the new man that he is knows that's a load of shit. Some people are perhaps alone in the world, yes, with no living connections of warmth and love of any sort to speak of. But that doesn't mean there aren't souls out there waiting to be met, souls waiting to be rediscovered. The overpowering smell of water lilies comes to him as he runs. A silhouette shoots through the ghosts, moving with incredible, agile precision as it cuts with a knife in a way that he is sure would make even Sokol envious. A spirit in the shape of an elven woman and a blue orb floating around her cut through the ghosts, the shadows of their existence in some other plane projected here for him to see as these specters. Heine looks at the ghost and the vapors drifting around her as he runs and nods. The ghost clenches her hands together over her heart. His boot hits the first step, and Heine makes his way up the throne, the stars in the sky having almost been fully extinguished. The wind surges, howling into his ears like the voice of 10,000 languishing screams as he reaches the precipice, the throne, and reaches the man who sits atop it. Heine grabs the king of the dead by his collar. "Ah," says the god of death, "a fine burst of life for me to extinguish," he says, "yet your efforts are in vain." The skeleton turns its head as Heine lifts his fist. "There is nothing you can do to me. You have no magic, and I can't be hurt by your human ways. This body is only a puppet." He looks back towards the sky. "The last light will extinguish your annoyance here. I will punish when we return you to the game board," says the god, "child of mine." "I told you already," says Heine. "I'm my own man. I call the shots in my life," says Heine, "regarding what I do, who I do it with, and why I do it." "Ah, is that so?" asks the god. "Quaint." "Yeah, it is." Heine snaps his fingers now a fourth time. The sound of it drifts around the darkening void, slowly cascading out in all directions, like a ripple, moving across a pond from its center. The fog howls as a quake moves through the ground rupturing and liquefying piece by piece as the spiritual realm tears open further, and a froggy, green, brackish swamp water takes over the entire bottom of the domain. Nikia! Yells Heine, looking out to the side as the summoned frog god manifests in her own way here on this plane. He looks up towards the sky as the two new, previously warring, presences observe each other for a tentative moment and seem to come to some silent understanding. Thousands of new eyes open in the sky as the ground tears itself apart, the realm slowly releasing itself from the void, piece by piece. "You idiot," says the god of death as the quivering wall of souls wavers. "I am an old, ancient, primal thing," it explains. "A frog and an owl can't suppress me." Heine snaps his finger again a fifth time. The fog erupts as Rhine and a group of people move in from the side, entering through a way that he can't see. "Funny how that works, right?" asks Heine, looking at his hand. "Turns out I do have magic after all, old man," says the man, looking back at the ghostly entity said to be his father. "It's all in the numbers." "Impossible," says the god of death. "Ash is mine, you are mine, your magic is ash." "No," says Heine, shaking his head. He snaps his finger again a sixth time. A loud jingling and jangling can be heard in the distance as a new presence arrives in the void. "What are you doing?" yells the god of death. "How? Promise you won't be mad?" asks Heine jokingly. "I am already mad," hisses the god. "Good," replies Heine, leaning in towards the skeleton as the entity summoned by the sixth snap, Avarice, tears through the void in the shape of a large, ruby dragon, covered in sacks of coins and jewels. "Wealth! How can you have magic in my domain?" yells the furious god, as colors of all kinds begin to fill the blackness. Eternal night is repelled by the convergence of many souls. Obscura and Nikia have placed their differences aside, filling the sky and the ground with tones of mysterious yellow and lush green. Avarice fills the air with red, burning away the lashing spirits of death. Rhine surges a constant stream of water forward, painting the lower world blue and azure and all of the others, the members of various religious factions of the frog god, of the god of wealth, and of every other god they have drummed up for this little operation, blast away the darkness little by little, the light of their collective presences overpowering the void as is the intent of life. "Well, the thing is," says Heine, snorting. "What?" yells the god of death, the skeleton moving to grab hold of his collar now in furious anger. Heine smiles and lowers a finger, pressing it against the skeleton's chest. "It turns out that the real magic, was friendship," says Heine, pleased with his joke. The world erupts into an array of so many various colors as an annoyed, horrific scream propels itself through the eternal darkness that is erased, piece by piece, by a full and total luminescence. Chapter 138. A dream of home is comfortable and not to be questioned. Accept it. Heine hurtles through whatever gap spans between non-existence and the physical domain, his spirit spinning wildly as it careens through the god space towards a place he had once come from. His soul, separate from the confines of his physical body, floats not dead, not alive. There has been a caveat to everything that has happened, and by everything, everything is meant. Over a decade ago, his birth mother had been killed by a woman who was fearful of what his birth means, given that he and his sister, Nikia, were both born of the seed of the god of death. Kidnapping that child, intent to sacrifice him to the owl god in order to move on with her own life. The elven woman, however, came to regret her choice for her own personal reasons, and then took him, running off to the far north to live in secret, far away from the elves and the gods of the south. There, in the distant north, where she disguised herself as a human, she met a man, and the two of them raised Heine. hiding him from the world at least until a time came when he started growing into his innate affinity towards magic. Realizing that they couldn't hide him longer, they sent a message to the boy's real father, the god of death, in order to arrange for his safekeeping, as the owl god whom Heine had been promised to as a baby was still being sought by the entity and, unbeknownst to them, the frog god Nikia. However, the god of death, setting his work into motion, had Heine's step-parents killed by the horse god, one of his devotees. During this murder, Heine, in a powerful discharge of his magic, filled the room with ash, killing the horse god, the fairy Eilig, as well as himself. There in death he slumbered for years and years, until enough years had passed that he could be returned to the world as a man. And returned he was. Heine was placed back into his old house, thinking that he had been in an orphanage, and there he stayed, waiting for his life to start. He thought it was the start of his own thread of fate, one that would find him one day. However, the owl gods and his encounter was not by sheer chance. It was set up. Obscura, having finally found him after his return to the mortal world, used her limited magic to forcefully arrange their encounter in the big now small forest, just outside of the northern city. After that, everything else was simple biology. She didn't mind control him to do any of those things. That is merely the abrasive effect of a god's presence on a person when they are near them, and Heine, desperate for love, purpose, and belonging, was fatefully attached to the owl god as she was to him, as was foreseen and planned by the god of death. From there, life went on as normal. Heine started making weapons as desired by the god of death, but also by the owl god, who was obsessed with regaining her old territory. However, something went awry with the plan. Outside factors begin moving in, things that the god of death didn't anticipate, to skew the formula of his manipulation of the world. Rhine, the river wizard, Sokol, Eilig, who the god of death himself had returned to the world to correct Heine's path toward one of war after the former two began softening him. But Eilig too, while trying to pull him away from the love he feels for the owl god, still added more damage to the tainting of his spiritual whole than a help, as she refound her role in life as his sister. And finally, the spell began to break. The signs of a god's magic interfering with the world began to leak through in secret corners and whispers. The word horse being the most notable of these hints, but many other such quirks of life were scattered along the way. The number 5 refers not only to such concepts as a horse, a demon, or even a human. It may also spell death. Nikia, the frog god, meanwhile, had been trying her hardest from the south to regain her biological brother as her own, despite the warped sickness of her mind caused by years of pain, spiritual poisoning born of too much worship, and a horrific fear of being judged for her appearance. The intended horrific, violent clashing of the owl god and the frog god, given Obscura's lowered war drive because of her newfound desire to share a home and family with Heine and everyone else, simply never came to be as the god of death had wanted. Every attempt of his to foster horror and war in the world had never achieved the great success that was promised of it. Heine, who was meant to be an avatar of death, simply lived a mostly quiet, uneventful life instead. The plan fell apart. In the end, everything that had happened and everything that hadn't happened transpired in a place that doesn't really exist. Much like the layer of reality that he had existed in when Nikia had kidnapped him was fake, so too was this world, in which Obscura had stolen his heart in the forest, as both of these illusions were founded on top of the canvas of the god of death. And while the god of death was indeed able to hinder Heine from using the magic of his attribute in the final battle, he could not hinder this leaking of the magic of the other gods, all tinging and smearing over his perfect reality with their own essences. 3 for Obscura, 4 for Nikia, and so on. Now the illusion is broken. The canvas isn't wiped clean, it is cast off, thrown to the ground and stomped on all over. Heine shoots through the void, heading towards a place that is white and bright, a place where he can sense many other souls gathering, souls of powerful gods, familiar and those less so. His vision begins to fill itself with vivid, bright green, as if he were flying towards the largest, greatest crown of any tree in the world. Heine covers his face, landing gracelessly as he crashes into the physical realm from the spiritual, returning to his body as he re-enters and rolls, tumbling over and over a hard surface until he comes to a stop, feeling like he fell down the longest staircase in the whole world. The man lets out a groan and lets his arm flop down to his side, looking up at the man he's flown against. A tall dark elf stands there, looking down his way. "Glad you could make it," says Avarice. Heine blinks and then shakes his head. "I think that's my line," he says. "Thanks for the save." Avarice holds down a hand to help him up and Heine grabs it, getting up to his feet as he looks around in confusion. "Heine Tilda," squawks a loud, excited voice, and before Heine knows, he's back on the floor again, tumbling over a second time now that something has latched onto him, sharp talons cutting through his shirt and into his back. Heine feels something pressing itself against his chest. It smells like owl. He sighs in relief, despite the blood pouring out of his back as he holds Obscura and looks up toward the ceiling, not really sure where they are. "You're all right," says a relieved voice from the side and turns, looking at Rhine, who jumps in. "Sokol," calls Rhine. "No," replies Sokol, rolling her eyes. Rhine shoots back and grabs her wrist, yanking her in with surprising strength. Something laughs nearby and sits down next to them. Heine takes the effort this time, she'll just have to forgive him. He grabs Seltsam, who is wearing her heavy robe, and pulls her in. The woman screams in abject terror but accepts her horrible fate. Heine splutters as they fall on top of him. He closes his eyes, sighing in relief. There's only one person missing. Eilig, the man, holds what he has tighter against himself, happy for this rare moment even if he doesn't really understand it. Another weight presses down on them. Heine opens his eyes. "Ribbit Tilda," says Nakia, laying over them. "Who Tilda?" shrieks Obscura, the pile breaking as everybody is thrown off into all directions as the owl springs to her feet, hissing as she readies herself for a new fight with Nakia. Looking at them from down below, Heine can see that they're both beaten up and rough. He assumes from duking it out with each other in the spirit world. The man gets up, stepping between them. "Heine," says Nakia excitedly. "Did you see? You called for me and I came for you," she says, grabbing his arm. "Foolish frog," screeches Obscura, grabbing his other arm and yanking him back. "You are but a simple tool that has served its simple purpose. Nothing more." Heine looks around himself, staring around the room that he's in, where Avarice, but also dozens of other faces who he sort of or simply doesn't recognize. Other gods. His vision moves back and forth as they yank on him, fighting for his attention. "Can this stop?" asks Heine, looking back at the two of them. Heine looks at Obscura. "She didn't kill your parents," he says, nodding to Nakia. "She got hurt trying to save me from being eaten by them." The owl god clicks, hissing at him. He looks at Nakia. "I'm your brother, stop being a freaky creep. We'll have breakfast sometime, okay?" "Ribbit Tilda, quite the family man," says Avarice, walking over. "You know it," replies Heine, still being yanked from left to right between the two of them. "What is this?" Avarice claps a hand on his shoulder and looks back towards the people who are gathering together, entering through doors that he can't quite wrap his head around. "Business, Weaponsmith Heine." "Isn't it always?" asks Heine. "Is this what you were after the whole time?" he asks. Avarice looks at him and then nods. The man taps his head. "What good is wealth if the world you're collecting it in isn't real?" "So you all knew?" asks Heine. Avarice nods. "Some of us did, some of us didn't." "I had my suspicions for a while." Heine thinks and then nods. "Is that why you took our side from the start when the frogs tried to take our old house?" he asks. "To let the charade go on." Avarice turns around, waving him off as he walks towards the crowd. No, replies the god. He looks over his shoulder. I gave your parents the loan for that old house myself personally, explains the god. They were good people. He shakes his head. It isn't always business, says Avarice. Sometimes it's personal. The god walks off, vanishing in the crowd. Heine stares after him before looking down around himself, wondering what happens now. This is it, right? This is the end of the illusions. Chapter 139, yet one must wonder if this is really the fate of what is to be, a spider's web. Where are we? Asks Heine, wandering around. We're home, says Rhine. Home? Asks Heine. He looks around himself, staring at the odd wooden walls and the knotted hard floor. The place is furnished, and there are decorations and knickknacks scattered around, together with warm rugs and soft bedding. Is this our tree? He asks, blinking. Rhine knocks on the wall. Sure is, says the young man. Hey, he looks around himself. Where's Eilig? He asks. Heine winces. We figured she'd come back with you. Heine sighs and puts a hand on Rhine's shoulder, shaking his head. Oh, says Rhine. He looks down, rubbing his arm. It's quiet for a while. Should I, do you want me to tell Seltsam? No, says Heine, patting his shoulder and then letting go. You've done enough, Rhine. Are you okay? Are you? Asks Rhine, looking back up at him. Heine stares back for a moment and then sighs. No, replies the man as he keeps on walking. What's going on here, Rhine? Asks the man, wanting to change the topic for now. What's with all the gods? Rhine walks after him. They're here to talk about the whole death fake world thing and now what the plan is from here. They should stop meddling with reality, maybe, says Heine, preaching to the choir, but tell them that, replies Rhine. Oh hey, check it out, says the young man, running to a door and pulling it open. This one's mine. Heine leans over, looking in. Nice, says the man, looking around the room at the furnishings and the staff propped up against the wall. You're gonna have a hard time sneaking girls in all the way up here, though. Yeah, Sokol and I talked about that too, notes Rhine, looking at him in confusion. I really have to figure out what the hell she's teaching you, sighs Heine. Rhine laughs, awkwardly closing the door again. Anyway, the tree's really big, look, says Rhine, running down the hall to a window. Heine follows after him. Careful, warns the young man. You gotta get used to it first. I got super dizzy and scared. What? Asks Heine, looking. You afraid of high? Heine stares out of the window, feeling his own legs weaken for a moment. He grabs onto the wall to hold himself stable as his eyes wander across the landscapes, far, far below. The forest, the city, all of it is rather minuscule from up so high. Heine can see straight towards the edge of the horizon and then even a glimmer more as the sun comes to rest after a long, eventful day. Holy hell, mutters Heine. Right, asks Rhine. It's crazy. I didn't know anything could get this big, but the tree just keeps growing and growing. He shrugs. Especially since all the gods have started gathering here. Rhine points over his shoulder. There's a big meeting going on soon. All of the gods want to chat, I guess. Wait, says Heine. You're telling me we have house guests? I mean, yeah, remarks Rhine. Heine sighs. I was hoping the tree would just be ours, you know. He looks out of the window. That's why we have the whole exterior struck. Yeah, about that, says Rhine. You know. Heine stares out of the window. The whole exterior structure that the military had built with all of its amenities has simply been crushed out of the way by roots as large as towers. The entire hill has been consumed by gnarled, growing wood. Seltsam had a really bad day, says Rhine. Sokol and I had to stay with her for the whole afternoon and move the books here, and she wouldn't stop crying the whole time. Heine rubs the back of his head. Yeah, fair, says the man. She had her heart in that library. Where is she? Rhine waves for him to follow, and they walk through the literal tree house. It's not a house that has been set upon the massive, heavenly branches of a tree so large that it can be seen from the outskirts of every city in the nation, but rather, it is firmly inside of its hard, steady wood like a series of organically grown tunnels and chambers. There's a new library. It's a little smaller, but I think she likes it more. explains Rhine, walking around a corner and stopping. Heine, lost in his gazing, bumps into the boy and then looks forward, staring at a regal, wispy woman standing there. Rhine's mother. Behind her stands Sokol. The room goes quiet for a moment as Heine steps forward, but Rhine stops him, holding up a hand against his chest and then looking back towards the woman. Sokol blows a strand of hair out of her face. She came with the frog. She asked to see you. Can we talk, Dro? She stops. Rhine, asks the woman, looking at him. Please. Heine looks at Rhine, who lowers his hand and thinks for a moment. Okay, replies Rhine. You sure? Asks Heine. I am, replies Rhine, looking up at him. A man needs to confront things like this, right? Heine looks at him for a moment and then nods. Rhine nods back. He walks past the woman, heading to Sokol, who quietly nods for him to follow her. They walk off down the corridor. As they go, the blue-haired woman and Rhine simply stare at each other from a cold distance, neither of them sure what the first word ought to be. You sure about this? Asks Heine as they leave. Sokol shakes her head. Yeah, replies the elf. Rhine can kick her ass if he needs to, but I think she means it. Means what? Asks Heine. Hell if I know, that she's sorry or whatever. Who cares? Sokol shrugs. Library, replies Heine, having the oddest sense of déjà vu. You know Rhine's been sending her most of his wages all of this time, right? Asks the elf. Heine looks at her. I did some digging. It turns out that they're not actually that rich, explains the elf. Most of it got lost when his dad died. Heine looks back over his shoulder and then keeps on walking. Rhine's a good man, I'd do the same thing. Even if she's a frog and she beat him, asks Sokol. Heine looks at her. Considering you're only telling me this now, I assume you feel the same. It's not my choice to make, but I'd make the same one. You really ruined Rhine with your weird divine manhood stuff, you know, she tusks. I'm trying so hard to get him to loosen up a little, but he's always no, Sokol, we can't kill them this, and no, Sokol, we can't do that. It's immoral that. Heine laughs. Sokol, what the hell are you teaching Rhine all day? Life stuff, replies the elf. Like what? Like mind your business, replies Sokol. Heine rolls his eyes. It is my business. He's turning out fine, right? Asks Sokol. So don't poke your nose where it doesn't need to be. You handle your stuff and I'll handle my stuff and Rhine will be normal enough. Heine stops and Sokol walks on a few steps, looking back. Sokol, no shit, who do you work for? Asks Heine. The elf tilts her head. At first I thought it was the horse, but he's dead, right? And I doubt you'd honor a contract that can't pay you. Then I thought you were working with death, but then you saved me there with those throwing knives. Sokol steps back, holding a finger against his mouth to shush him. The elf leans in. Don't ask so many difficult questions, okay? Says the elf. Heine lifts an eyebrow. It was one question. Yeah, replies Sokol. She pokes at his chest. One too many, you just have faith in your old auntie Sokol, all right? She asks. I work for me. Which leads us where? Asks Heine. Sokol spins her finger in the air, turning around as she saunters off. It leads us to the library, which is this way, says the woman. Anyways, I told you, didn't I? She asks, waving him off. I'm retiring. She taps her head. Ah, right, says Heine, walking after her down a few different halls until they get there. Here we are, says Sokol, opening the door for him. Is this some sort of trap? He asks, looking into the room and stepping inside. You already fell into the trap when you signed my papers, replies Sokol. Heine smiles, turning around to look at her. Hey, Sokol. What? Thanks. Sokol rolls her eyes and slams the door on him, leaving him in the library. Heine looks around the room. It's definitely not as large as the other library was down below, but it's very cozy. The shelves are made out of rootwood carved right into the tree, and there is a heavy, deep smell of antiquity in the air. Hello, calls a voice from the side. Oh, hi, says Seltsam. Hey, says Heine, walking in. Sorry about the whole hugging you thing before, he says. It was a moment. That's okay, says the voice from behind the shelf. I always wanted to have a moment, you know. I feel you, replies Heine. Nice place. Yeah, thanks, says Seltsam. It's really great, and Heine stares at the shelf he's standing in front of. The voice comes from the other side. "She's not coming, is she?" asks the voice rather abruptly. Heine shakes his head. "No, she's not, Seltsam," says the man, looking up at the little fairy house up by the shelves above. It's quiet for a while as someone shuffles books on the other side of the shelving. "She told me, you know," asks the librarian. "About your blood," Heine nods. "I guess that's why I was able to see you without freezing," he says. "Magical blood, but he shakes his head. "Let me guess. She only promised not to tell me specifically, right?" "Yeah," replies Seltsam. "I was supposed to be the fallback when she got sick back in the old house," explains the librarian. "She wasn't sure if she was going to live long enough." There is a loud sniffle. "So she wanted me to, tell you." "You good?" asks Heine. "No," croaks a cracking voice in a defeated tone. A book drops to the floor, and it's quiet for a moment as Heine lowers his gaze away from the shelf, as if he were looking into her distraught face. Then she screams, and a dozen more fly from the shelf, scattering all around the floor as someone slumps down. Heine walks down around the shelf and looks at the chaos that has unfolded. A heap of scattered, open books lie everywhere, and in the middle of them is a person who has lost their best friend. "Sorry," says Heine, stepping over the books as he walks to her and kneels down, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Seltsam." The librarian howls and grabs his shirt, pressing herself into it. "Don't look at me," she screams at him as she falls apart like so many books all around them. "Don't." Heine holds her and shakes his head as she cries into him. "I won't," says the man, looking at the books on death and resurrection that lie scattered around. She already knew before he got here. Seltsam howls. "I promise," says Heine. Chapter 140. Will frogs croak sweetly to tell us the truth of what lies beneath the bad water? It's hard to say what exactly is left to be done with life from here on out. Heine stands there looking at the frog god Nekia, the sworn rival of the woman he intends to marry. She is a person who has caused him lots of trouble, and she's a declared enemy of the owl god. But Nekia has never hurt anyone. Sure, she kidnapped him and brainwashed him. But those were things she did out of the sickness of her mind and the desperation of her heart. "Why didn't you just tell me?" asks Heine, looking at her. "Why all of the games and the kidnapping?" he asks. "Why the mind control and everything?" He shakes his head. "You really could have just sent a letter," says Heine, noticing a repeating theme in every single interaction of his with any god. One line, "We're related, weird, right?" And that would have been that. Nekia looks at him, playing with the hair of her wig. "We were brother and sister before," she explains. "However, I died, you died, Ribbit," says the frog god. "That frees us both of the shackles of those bonds." "Like hell it does, you weirdo," replies Heine, clapping a hand down onto her shoulder. "Ribbit," she asks, looking down at it and then at him. "You realize you're kind of out there, right?" he asks, tilting his head. "I think the whole frog thing really messed you up." She frowns, looking away dejectedly. "So you do think I'm ugly, right?" "Hey," says Heine. "I said you're weird, not that you're ugly," he explains, pointing at himself. "I told you already, this here is a masterpiece," says Heine, "and it runs in the family." Nekia tilts her head, matching the angle of his, to stare at him from the same level, her throat moving, stretching in and out as she breathes. "I promised to take care of you," replies Nekia. "I didn't." "You did," replies Heine. "Because of you, I didn't get eaten back then, and now here I am." He looks at her. "I pissed off our dad and ruined his life's work like any good son would. I have a good life and a good family, I'm happy." Her throat stretches in and out as she quietly croaks, watching him with her emerald eyes. "You're free from your promise, it's done," says Heine, pulling her in and hugging her. "Thank you." The big frog croaks and awkwardly stands there for a moment. "What is this?" she asks. "Are we eloping?" Heine sighs. "Get a grip. It's called an awkward sibling hug," he says, patting her back. "It's what families do, I think." "Hi tilde ni tilde ni tilde hi tilde, no more of that," he says as Nekia hugs him back. "We'll try to make this work somehow. I still need to talk to Obscura," he says. "This is going to be a whole thing." Something wet touches his ear and he turns his head to look at the long tongue that has risen up over his shoulder. And now you made it weird. Okay, says Heine, letting go of her and wiping his ear dry. Good talk. There is a quiet croaking from her throat as she pulls her tongue back in. We can talk more, right? Asks Nikia. You want to talk to me, right? She blinks. You're not just pretending to want to talk to me, right? Heine nods. Right, he affirms, saying it a fourth time. She smiles. Hey, I gotta ask out of curiosity, where did you get all of your money from anyway? He rubs his chin. Who pays the frog god? She croaks and looks around before leaning in to whisper into his ear. Wishing wells. Huh? Asks Heine, looking at her in confused surprise. Extremely apt specimen of humanity. The god is huge and muscly bound like an ox, wearing a strange, skin-tight outfit. Keep up the good work, says Heine, nodding to him. Love where this is all going. He looks back at Nikia. Nikia, who gives a fuck about horses? Now, says a voice from the side. Another man walks over. Heine doesn't recognize him from anywhere. Please, Weaponsmith Heine, says the stranger, lifting his hands. We haven't met yet, says the god of something or other. But let me say that it's been a hard time for you. You haven't slept yet and a lot has happened. He tries to calm Heine down. You're raving. He looks around the room. Let's just take a second to breathe, okay? Heine quietly stares at him for a moment. That may be true, actually. He may actually be raving like a lunatic in a room full of guests right now. He looks around the room in confusion, wondering why he's the only one babbling like an incoherent madman. That's very unusual for his home. His eyes wander over the party and the hundreds of people here, all of great wealth, power, and station, all gathered in one room together to conspire about the world's future. He narrows his eyes in suspicion. Wait, when has that sentence ever led to something good happening? Heine's eyes go wide as he realizes what this is. Oh, fuck me, says the man. He looks around at the room, realizing. We're still in it, aren't we? He asks. This isn't base reality, is it? Something croaks quietly next to him. Chapter 141. Poor eyes have fell for the illusion of the gods, yet it was fake. Like everything else, it just doesn't make any sense. Okay, sure, he can accept the existence and the following death of the horse god. Those are both reasonable enough things. But if the horse god is dead, then why was its influence over this reality so strong? Why was the number 5 a factor? Why was the list of names, starting with his own, a factor? And what does that even mean? Does it mean that the universe changed their names to bring them together just for that lineup? Or does it mean that everyone else on that list just wasn't real and they were all just part of a cosmic quirk, existing solely so that they could be there as names on a sheet of paper? Surely the god of horses can't be more powerful than any other entity with 5 letters, such as death or water. So how can it have such strength over the full and total manipulation of reality, especially considering that it's, dead? Heine looks around the room, where the guests are standing and whispering amongst themselves, likely because of his clear lack of social decorum. Gods hardly live in the normal world, even if they're on the mortal coil. They spend their days amongst the rich and the noble, and as such, they live according to those principles of life. But something's wrong, isn't it? This all feels wrong. It smells wrong. It reeks of, well, not frogs, but of something. A hand clutches him from behind, and Heine looks at the owl god who stands there tilting her head. She lifts another hand, stroking his face. Poor Heine, he suffers, yes, asks the god, clicking with her mouth. A soft hand runs over his cheek. It has been a lot for the Heine man's human mind. She shakes her head. The god ways are very tiring, she explains, lowering her palm to rest it against his chest as he turns around. And his heart aches for his fairy, does it not? Asks Obscura. Heine rests his hand on top of hers. I just don't get it, says the man, rubbing his forehead with his other hand. He asks. Obscura softly hoots. I thought I had it all figured out, but now, he stops and shakes his head. It was like all of the pieces fit together and I had a nice clean puzzle to look at, but Heine frowns. Now it's like I looked closer and I noticed that one of those puzzle pieces is squishy and soggy and it doesn't fit right. She shakes her head and nods. Come, we will retreat from all this, yes, she asks, looking over the party. The Hiney man and his ob tilde scoo tilde ra tilde will find a quiet place and they will rest. She looks up at him. That is what he needs most now, not this game of many words. Hiney looks at her golden eyes, feeling his heartbeat moving through her palm and back into his own fingers that rest over it. It has been a lot. Maybe he really is just in some grief-induced delirium, right? The man sighs, the tension in his shoulders loosening as he exhales. He smiles, lifting his gaze again to look at her, to look at Rhine and Sokol. They've always come for him. No matter what happens, no matter where he's been taken and for whatever reason, they've always come for him. He squeezes her fingers. These are his people and they're good people. They'll cross heaven and the world to find him. Something latches onto his back. Ribbit tilde, says the big frog. I'm coming too. Frog, screeches Obscura, spinning back around, having just been in the process of leading Hiney away. She points at Nikia. I have spared your life because I will not dirty my home with your vile intestines, says the owl god, clicking with her mouth. But you will release my Hiney. Spared? Asks Nikia, looking over his shoulder. Pretty sure I was plucking you bald when we fought. Frog lies, hoots Obscura angrily. Knock it off, you two, says Hiney. If I don't get to freak out, neither do you. Obscura hoots with a long, prolonged hoot, narrowing her eyes and squeezing his hand. Nikia, I'm just gonna, I dunno, take a nap. I think I need 5, you know, says Hiney, stopping himself as he says the sentence. There's that number again. His eyes wander to the ground, running along the floor in random patterns as he thinks for a second. You keep an eye on things for me here, okay? She ignores his request and looks past him towards Obscura. I'll give you the smelly owl tree in the south back if you get out of my Hiney's life, offers the frog god. Obscura hisses, her eyes going wide. I will have my tree and my Hiney, says the owl god. Obscura has no need to give away what is hers to receive what is also hers. Hiney rubs his face as the two of them argue. This is a whole mess that needs to be sorted out somehow. But maybe, wait, what was he doing? Hiney blinks, looking around the room. He came here all angry and bothered, didn't he? Asking about the horse. Yeah. The man rubs his eyes and looks down at himself as the frog, wrapped around his shoulders, and the owl, holding his arm, devolve into a spat. Hiney looks around the room again, counting as his eyes wander over his people. Himself 1. Obscura 2. Hiney looks at Sokol and Rhine, who are standing in the back like a pair of silent wallflowers. Sokol has her arms crossed and her head down. Rhine has a single boot kicked back behind himself against the wall. Rhine 3. Sokol 4. Not that he has too much against the number, as Nikia is clearly mentally unwell and that needs a certain amount of understanding, but it isn't a number that is his. Number 5 is missing. Eilig. I will not warn you again, frog. Hoots Obscura. Release him or lose what limbs that remain of your disgusting body. Unlike you, I'll give up everything for my Hiney, argues Nikia. The man clenches his fist. What kind of crap is this? He's supposed to believe that this is reality. He's supposed to buy that Eilig made a deal with the god of death to babysit him and then she just kind of fucked off and died. Without a fight. The fairy, his violent, overbrimming with life and snark sister, just gave him a peck on the head and let herself be taken back to the spirit world. No questions asked, no fighting and kicking, no blasts of magic and no alternative plan, even if she surely knew what would happen once the two of them worked their way through the illusions of death. Horse shit, says Hiney. The two gods stop their spat and look at him. 5, she's missing. This is wrong, it's all wrong. He recalls, back after they moved, the last time he had spoken to Eilig he had heard something, the ordering of their names, that alluded to the word horse. He had wanted to look it up immediately after that. He wanted to ask Seltsam about it and instead, Hiney stares, turning his head. Instead, he forgot, his memory going blank, and he spent the night walking around in the darkness with Obscura. Something knew he was on its trail. Something knew that he was about to find it, and it stopped him from doing so. His eyes, sharpened by months of time spent near the owl god, shift around the room. Something isn't just affecting reality as a whole, it's watching him specifically. There is some force in the universe still trying to guide him, as it has always been doing. It guided him away from the horse, but its magic was still breaking through reality, just like the magic of the owl affects threes and the magic of the frog affects fours. There's something close to him, and it's still. He scans the room. It's still here. It's never left. This whole life before was a setup that he thought he had just escaped from by defeating death. But what if the escape, the defeat of death, was also a setup? What if this was meant to pacify him and sedate him? To make him think that he had gotten out, that he had figured out the game being played? What if this whole comfortably sad resolution is meant to make him shut up and sit down? Gods are really the fuckiest of creatures, aren't they? Nothing is ever what it seems. There is never just a single, straight sentence. His people have always come for him. He's not going to sit here and play pretend when his sister is out there without him. Eilig came to find him. She put everything she had into getting him out of this mess. He won't just let her stay wherever she is. Heine looks at Obscura. "I need to know," says Heine, looking into her eyes. "Who was the horse?" asks the man. "He's not dead." Mutters come from around the room. Heine lifts his hand, looking at it. Obscura looks at him too, her fingers locking into his. "Heine, you are following a human thought hallway, but you are in a god-home situation," she explains, clicking with her mouth. "Trust your Obscura, you must rest, please," she says. "I worry for you." "Don't," says Heine. "I'm fine, but I'm only going to ask you one more time," he says. "If you don't answer, I'm asking Nikia instead," threatens the man. Something rivets on his shoulder. Obscura hoots, her eyes going wide in betrayal. "This is about my sister, please," begs Heine with hurt eyes, looking at the owl god. "I want you to answer me. What is this?" "Enough," says a man from the side. "We're not here for this nonsense," says the god, walking over and grabbing Heine's arm. Blood sprays across the room as the strange man's arm, held in place by a long, sticky tongue, is cut off at the wrist by a set of sharp talons. He screams, stumbling back and holding his gushing stump. "You will not touch my Heine," screeches Obscura at the injured god. "Lesser thing," hisses the owl. "Damn," says Heine, looking down at the severed hand on the floor and then back to her as the other man screams and falls to the ground. "That's kinda hot." "Gross," calls Rhine from across the room. Sokol just shrugs. Heine looks at him. "You'll understand when you're older, Rhine," promises the man. The blue-haired woman, also standing at the sides, gasps in horror. "I helped too, Ninny Tilda," says Nikia, still holding onto his back. The man rolls his eyes. "Okay, and now it's weird again," sighs Heine, looking back at Obscura. "You must understand," says Obscura, "that some secrets are best left in the dark places." She tilts her head, her feathers coated in blood. The crowd moves around, several of them getting uppity for several reasons. The Heine man has a strong glow, but the empty truth is beyond firefly lights. "I get it," replies Heine. "But that dark place is where Eilig is. I'm not going anywhere without her," he says, lifting a hand to press his palm against her chest. "Just like I wouldn't go anywhere without you." He nods to Rhine and Sokol. "It's everyone or nothing, that's the deal." She clicks with her mouth. "You must be careful what you wish for," says the owl god. "Frog," she says, hissing and narrowing her eyes. "You will serve my Heine." "I mean, that's the idea, yeah," says Nikia. "Really?" he asks, looking over his shoulder. "Come on, it's really getting kinda old now, Nikia." "Want me to make it worse?" whispers Nikia into his ear. "I'm sorry to intervene in this, private family affair," says a voice from the side. Avarice. The man steps over the puddle of blood on the floor as the other god is dragged away. "But perhaps we can focus on the matter at hand," he asks, nodding to the collection of people. Everyone is here now. We need to talk about the future going forward. Obscura clicks again and looks at him. It is too late, Lizard, says the owl god. For I have redecided what the forward future will be. Pardon, asks the god of wealth, narrowing his eyes. Avarice, says Heine. I thought you were on the up and up after that whole base reality and not all business spiel. You really got me good, he sighs. You're just one of them, aren't you? This is just about power. Whatever do you mean, asks the god. Cut the shit. I know this here isn't reality, says Heine, as several people walk closer towards him. I'm out. Avarice looks at him. I'm afraid I can't allow that, Weaponsmith Heine. You don't know what you're hoping to unravel here. Generations of lives have been sacrificed for this project to come to a close. We're so close now. No, you're not listening to me, says Heine, looking at the god of wealth and leaning in towards his face as owl and frog hands press themselves against his body, as Rhine and Sokol and everyone else gather around him. You gods never do. I said I'm out. Heine snaps his fingers. Heine has used ash. Antichrysalis, the room erupts into hundreds of horrific screams and everything goes dark. He's going to find out what this all is once and for all. No games, no illusions, no mind control. Just the eyes of a dead man seeing what there is to see. Chapter 142. This is what must have happened in the past, no. It seems so darkness surrounds him. I can't do this any more, says the man's voice, resounding out around him in the darkness. Back and forth, over and over and over. It's quiet for a time and then he sighs. First it was this reality, then it was that reality, then it was this other reality, and I can't keep doing it. I'm tired of going in circles. He drifts. I want it all to just stop. I want to go back to zero. Heine looks around himself as the vision comes into focus, not being entirely sure who he's talking to in all honesty. A sheet of paper flies past his face, falling apart into cinders as it unravels. It's the name list again. The one that spelled horse kills out with their individual names. Heine watches as the room comes into focus. It is the restaurant of the Old Adventurers Guild. The vision of his old childhood seems to be repeating again. His feet land on the ground and he stands there, where he stood before together with Eilig as he watches the memory of his step-parents' death replay one more time. His stepfather opens the door and is evaporated by magic. Heine watches him vanish into a mist. Importantly, the magic is not ash this time around. After all, why would the horse god have access to ash magic? Ash is death's magic. That memory, that last vision he saw of this place, it was just as distorted and manipulated as everything else. Nothing is clean. Nothing in any existence or dream is free from the god's manipulations. His stepmother vanishes next, her scream echoing around the room, and then the boy on the floor erupts, his ash magic violently exploding out into all directions. The horse god thunders towards him as before, barreling through the magic of the fearful child, not all of that bothered by the ash. After all, why would he be? Heine's ash magic has only ever mildly hurt Obscura, like when he burnt her during their meeting, or Nikia during his latest kidnapping, a little. It never really endangered them. So why would the horse god have been any different? How could Heine's ash magic have killed him? It couldn't have. It doesn't add up. The man watches as the horse lifts the boy up with a massive hand and then just crushes his neck. A blue light shoots in from the side and is caught in a second hand, and there is a second cracking. The horse god drops both of them to the ground, the ash fading away as the caster has died. It turns, leaving the house with all of its inhabitants dead. He died. Well, he sort of already knows that, right? After all, in the previous version of this memory, he had died too, only because of the ash. He supposes the difference in this and that version is that the horse is the one who killed him directly. It's a little grim, but it doesn't change much, does it? Heine looks at the anarchy, wondering why the vision hasn't faded yet. There is a horrific screeching. Heine turns his head to the side as his favorite window shatters, A massive, hulking behemoth breaks the glass, flying through it. The horse god falls over as something hits him. Attached to his face are a set of talons that cling to the bone, as a horrific bird gouges out his eyes and slashes at his throat. The owl god. She was here too. It is true, says Obscura. Heine turns his head, looking at her as she stands there and watches the vision unfold. Obscura had been watching her Heine prize for many days before his parents' decision, she explains. But he was stolen from me, hisses the woman, narrowing her eyes as she watches her past self mutilate the horse god, killing him. Hey, says Heine, looking at her. How old are you? Foolish Heine man, shrieks the real Obscura, pointing at him. This question is not relevant for the fantastic reveal of Ob-Sku-Ra's secrets, she argues, her eyes going wide. Heine blinks, looking at her and then back at his own dead child body. I mean, it kind of is. Irrelevant, she hoots. Heine shrugs and then looks back at the mess that is the dead horse god, the owl standing triumphantly on top of his corpse. So, the horse god killed me and you killed the horse god, that sums it up, right? Asks Heine. He isn't sure how this final piece of the puzzle fits into everything. Obscura nods. Yes, it sums it up like the math that smelly sock elf likes to do in her books. You really should think of a better nickname for her, sighs Heine. Fool, hoots Obscura. You do not see the game being played, Heine shrugs. Honestly, I'm kind of giving up at this point. He spins his finger. Can we just sum it all up in 3 sentences, please? She clicks with her mouth and turns away, watching the memory. The smell of socks is a familiar smell, says the owl god. It smells of horses. Wait, what? Asks Heine. So she was working for the horse, called it. The owl of the past that had just killed the horse god walks over to the dead boy, pressing and prodding him with her beak, hooting in distress. There is a slight commotion. By the time she turns around, the horse god has escaped out of the broken window, having not been dead after all. Is that all that's different in the real memory of what happened in the past? So the horse god is alive and not dead. How is that relevant, unless... I don't understand anymore, says Heine. This memory is from Death's reality, right? It is, she replies. Why did Death want to kill me, asks Heine. I mean, he could have done it any time, but why wait until I was a kid? He shakes his head. Especially if he's actually my dad. That's just bad parenting, you know. She clicks again. That is because the Heine understands parenting in the way of a human. She looks at him. In the ways of a god, you are a threat. The owl god pokes a talon into his chest. A child of a god is destined to overtake them one day. It is the nature of things. She tilts her head. The owl god surpasses the owl god. The death god surpasses the death god. Obscura's yellow eyes examine him. The title remains, the cycle continues. What? Asks Heine. You're telling me the old man thought I was gonna steal his gig? He looks around himself. Is that all this was the whole time? He shakes his head. I don't even want the job, plus I guess I'm dead, so he narrows his eyes. Is that a prerequisite or a disqualifier to being the god of death? Obscura hoots. Those are both pretty words. He will teach them to his Obscura, yes. Sure, replies Heine. So what were the other gods trying to do the whole time? We beat death, so what's their agenda? To push forward in a reality with no god of death, replies Obscura. In the place Heine and Obscura just left, the many others would have liked to live as masters of all dominions. She ruffles her feathers. Death is the thing that keeps other gods from leaving their own trees, but without it the water may go into the fire and the fire may go into the rocks. Heine thinks for a moment, looking around the void. And now Heine must decide, says Obscura. Decide what? Asks the man holding her hands. Nakia told me something about a decision too. He sees the annoyed expression on her face at the mention of the big frog's name. We'll talk about her later. Heine must decide which reality he prefers, says the owl god. Heine sighs. Can't there just be one? You know, just base reality with no manipulation. Impossible, says Obscura. This is what Heine must understand, she says. For this wish to be the case, there may be no more gods in the world. She looks at him, and that includes his obscura. And my other choices, he asks. You must choose another god to base reality on, says obscura. You may choose your obscura or another, she explains, to hold the world aloft with their mighty talons. Heine stares at her, wondering about the many mysteries of life for a time, but there's something he doesn't get. Why am I making this choice, he asks. Is this how reality works? The man shrugs. I'm hardly qualified. Obscura tilts her head, staring at him with wide eyes. The Heine man does not listen. I just told him. He has usurped the god of death, says the owl god, lifting a hand to press it against his chest. Now my mighty Heine holds the title, she says, screeching a little. Heine stares at her, blinking. Oh, wait, I'm the new god of death, he asks, looking around himself. Damn, I feel that might be a little over-exaggerating, I mean. He looks down at himself. I'm in good shape, but I don't really feel a goddy, you know. Heine shakes his head. Besides, the old man can keep the job, I don't want it. Obscura looks at him. In this reality, Heine is the new god of death, she explains. It is. That sounds like a terrible position. I'm not interested, says Heine. She tilts her head. He is not interested in incredible cosmic power, she asks, clicking with her mouth. In the amazing gifts of primal divinity, asks the owl god. She spins her head. No matter what wish he has for his obscura or himself, Heine could grant it. The owl god lifts a hand. The river boy's father, Heine's parents, they could all be returned to us in a reality of Heine's choosing. He looks at her, wrapping a hand around her palm on his chest. And yours, she looks at him and then shakes her head. It saddens Obscura, but her father would insist on eating her Heine, says the owl god. Our union would not be approved by my family. Rough. Heine sighs and leans forward, planting a kiss on her head. Can we just go back, he asks. I just want to be me, says Heine. With you and Rhine and everyone else, that's it. The man looks around the void that they're in. The dead are dead, we can join them when we're ready, no need to bring them back to us. And the Eilig fairy, asks Obscura. Heine looks at her and then down to the ground for a minute as he thinks about the last piece of the puzzle. Why did Eilig just give up and go? Death's influence over reality, right? That means it doesn't count. Can I ask you something? Asks Heine, looking back at her. This is a serious question. Obscura looks at him and nods. How important is godhood to you? Asks the man. She tilts her head. I'm sick of all this, he says. All of this mind control and reality bending, I can't keep track anymore. It's such a mess. I just want it all to stop, explains Heine. He wishes to banish the gods from their own world. Asks Obscura. Fuck them, it's our world, replies Heine, pointing at himself. Gods were made by people, she hoots. There's something I want, honestly, but I need to know how you feel, asks Heine. And of the others, she asks. The man shakes his head. I don't give a frog's ass about what Avarice or any of the other gods think, explains Heine. He looks her in the eyes. I want to know what you think. Obscura stares at him for a time, her fingers moving around on his chest as she thinks. The owl god looks back up his way. There is a way, says Obscura. But Heine must understand the situation. There is no return from this, she explains. Once a chick falls from the nest, it may never return. Good, says Heine. I don't intend to come back. I want a world without the gods messing everything up all the time, explains the man. I just want to live and die a normal life with my family, says Heine, holding her hands. That's it. No power, no war for the South, no frogs or owls or any of that, just us. She clicks once more. He is truly a selfish creature, explains Obscura. You know it, replies Heine. So, the owl god tilts her head. Obscura agrees, she says. Heine feels a strong sense of relief come over him. But he must finally fulfill his sacred promise to her, explains the owl god, lifting a finger. Her hand remains ringless. Heine is a creature of little shame, yet she longs for him to feel it deeply in his soul, explains Obscura. A wedding, Heine nods. Fair enough. Reality begins to unravel as the work begins. Chapter 143, There are so many things to be understood, yet how does one do so? A mystery. Where does one begin? Where could anyone begin when unraveling the incredible mess that is the timeline of the mortal world? The fabric of reality has become such a complicated, tangled, and knotted mess. But how could it have ever become anything else? Like a loom that is being spun by a dozen seamstresses, there are simply too many hands altering the fabric, shaping it this way and that way, so that it may suit their own desires for it. And the final result of it all is that the people who are destined to live with this creation, humanity and their peers, are simply left with something suboptimal. The world, under the direct presence, influence, and guidance of the gods, is suboptimal because they are unable to lay their desires for power and control to the side. Over a decade ago, Heine was stolen as a baby from his birth mother. The woman who killed her and had then in turn raised him herself, had then fled to the north, but after it became apparent that she could no longer keep him safe, she reached out to the boy's birth father, the god of death. This creature sent his lackey, the horse god, to kill them, but also Heine, which he accomplished. However, the horse god had become deeply scarred in the process, given that the owl god Obscura had attacked him before he escaped. This exact moment here is where everything became a mess. The god of death kept Heine with himself in slumber until the boy had grown enough to fulfill his promise as the hand that would guide the world to destruction. However, this plan did not work, ironically enough, because of the very meddling of the other gods, interfering with Death's doing so. Heine's death as a child had been interfered with by the owl god, who began weaving her threads both after his death and post his return to the mortal coil as a man, a decade later. The frog god Nikia. Avarice, the god of wealth, and all of the other gods, aware of Death's plan to usurp the natural order, began placing their fingers into the fabric as well, tying off knots and ends in order to suit their desires to not only rid the world of Death's base influence over it, but to, instead, assert their own dominion over creation. Even the horse god, mangled and wounded as it was, has been vying for influence all the time in this world to this very day. Proof of this can be seen in the presence of fives throughout Heine's life, and in the presence of Sokol, who had been hired by the hooved entity. Yet, weaning off from the influence of his dominion and falling under that of the owl god, Sokol had abandoned her mission and instead found her place in the house of the Heine man. This chaos is just the nature of gods Heine has found. They can't help themselves. They always want more power, more control, more influence. Being a god throws one into the race for power, resulting in a constant vying for territory in order to not fall into obscurity. The gods manipulate reality left and right in order to gain inches more might and influence, even at the cost of the clear, deciding factor of the fate of souls that belongs to the people of the world. But enough is enough. It all has to end. He can't accept living his life like this, not alone and not with the people who surround him, despite the irony of their having been brought to him in the first place by the power of the gods, and in the back of his mind, a voice might even tell him that this is the sole reason they had stayed. But he dismisses that. Heine is certain that the people who he has gathered around him are his own. They are not tied to him via the binding power of a god's magical influence over their minds. No, instead, he is certain to the core depths of his deep soul that his people are with him because of the blood of the covenant that they have formed, which is thicker than any magical ties. The strings of fate that guide their individualities together sit in a neat, clean, natural fabric, ordained by the cosmos, free of any external godly influence. Familyhood. As for the world, what could an alternate world, one without gods, even begin to look like? He finds it hard to imagine. A world in which every man and woman is free to follow their own fate, free of outside influences. No matter the road one takes, be it a road that leads towards fantastic adventures or to horrific nightmares, the choices are one's own to make, together with a dash of luck, and the consequences of such are one's own to carry. The burden of actions actually mattering, of developments mattering, developments made by simple, mortal hands that are bound to be present in the world for only the briefest flash of life, when held to the full timeline of humanity, is incredible. But what bright flashes they might end up being, no. Given the fact that he has now usurped the god of death, and as the entity's child, taken on its role as the base weaver of reality in this existence, Heine decides that it really is for the best that all of this just unravels a little. The threads that the gods have woven can, mostly, come apart, if that means it will allow humanity to finally decide its own fate without such things as owls, frogs, or horses getting in the way of it all. People will find their own ways to cause chaos and anarchy, and that in itself is already good enough for the world. Present in the spirit realm, Heine looks at the spirit that is intertwined with his own, obscura. The two of them, as rather abstract non-corporeal entities, wind around each other to create a beautiful pattern. Other strings move through it as well, threads of azure blues, greens, yellows, and reds. Threads of so many colors move through the cosmic pattern to create a shape of life that is something new, but not entirely so. The spirit world collapses in on itself and Heine and everyone else return to the reformed world, now not as gods or as any such abstract things, but rather just as people. And from there, life continues on in old, familiar ways. Chapter 144. The End. What could a world without gods even look like? Just in plain theory, of course. Without grand temples to the specter of death, without the guiding force of avarice influencing the free market and its doings, without the gods of the lakes and rivers and the waters of ponds, whose names can hardly begin to be relevant, all influencing the flow of such things, without all of these things and so many, many more factors, what could the world ever hope to be? How could people die without a god of death? How could money be exchanged without a god of wealth? How could water flow without a god of water? Well, it turns out, the answer to all of these questions is roughly the same pretty decently, actually. People die just the same as before. Money is just as valuable and useful a commodity as it was before, and water, well, water remains water. There isn't much to change in the formula, gods or no gods. It's strange, really. The grand halls of such entities, the temples and the churches and all of this, remain, having of course been physical structures. However, the people inside of them seem to rouse from their dazes. Followers and devotees of many gods find themselves living in marked confusion, as they come to realize that they don't actually like what it is that they have been doing. Fervent forgemasters of the Tower District set down their hammers, now that the influence of the god of the forge leaves them, and they realize that they actually hate the job. Priestesses of death stroll away from the temple, staring at the sunlight of a new day in ample confusion. Servants of avarice, the god of wealth, walk out of the bank and realize that they hate working with money and that they'd rather be doing something fun instead. All across the world, in this nation and others, the collective influence of the gods begins to fade markedly quickly. Some presences take days to dissipate, others vanish in minutes or hours. Some people mourn this sudden, unexplained disappearance that nobody seems to have any reasoning for. One day, the gods were here. The next day, they weren't. For many, this is a crisis of untold proportions. Their entire lives have been devoted to these gods in one way or another. They howl at the moon and the sun, begging in the streets for the gods to come back. But if the gods are listening, they never do. Many people leave their professions and lives. Many others remain, staying true to what they followed before, as it was not the gods that led them to this life path, but rather their own yearning for their professions and trades instead. Heine isn't any different. He still works in the forge, but the war effort is over. It seems that, in the chaos of the intensity of the final battle, the gods had sent a final, permanent signal to herald the end of the war with such fearful intensity that those who remained immediately ceased their actions, going against the orders of officers and nobles in distant cities. Even now, 3 days later, ash still falls from the sky like snow. The land is burned and smoldering, refusing to cool down. The central city, what had remained of it, is essentially flattened and burnt away. Hundreds, if not thousands of people, soldiers on all sides, were simply erased in the anarchy, brought unto death by a spell so strong that it could have only been cast by God. This marking of the end of an era, this great ash, as the people have come to call it, appears to be the only sign of the gods vanishing that remains. That and the great tree in the center of the world that belongs to a renowned, powerful family. People flock to the city, to this site of sacred pilgrimage, in the hopes that perhaps there the gods are able to be found. But they are not. In the center of the world, around the base of the great tree, are only more people like themselves. However, this land is blessed. For 5 days, ash rains from the sky, but then it stops. The land cools and it becomes, over a span of time, fertile beyond recognition. The ash and the burning of so much dead wood, the power of the massive tree that soaks up the world's ambient streams of magic, all of this comes together to make a place that is as close to heaven as is possible down here on the world. And this is what the people come to understand. A city begins to form around the base of the giant world tree. First, it starts with simple houses, but then the people move on to making homes and shops, taverns and inns. Tradespeople make their crafts and adventurers come in droves, not for any dungeon, but to fight the wild monsters that begin to appear on the outskirts of the region in abundance because of the magic present in the area. The gods have left for the heavens for their own reasons, but they have left this down here in their wake, this promised paradise, as proof that, even without their divine presences, the world can be just as fantastic and good. Heine makes sure never to tell anyone what really happened, and the others do the same. It is their secret, and the world does not need to know what really happened. It's all too complicated, isn't it? Even if he wanted to, how would he begin to tell the world of the gods' layers of manipulation stacking over each other, one after another after another? There's just no marketable way to explain it. So he also propagates the simple, easy, and sellable story under Sokkel's guidance. That is to say, the gods simply left for the heavens. That's it. That's all there is to the whole story. And it works. The people mourn and then life goes on. It is more tragic for some than it is for others. This is undeniable. For all of their schemes and games of power, for all of their shady handlings and practices, the gods also wrought a lot of good for a lot of people, sparing them from the fates of wretchhood and misery. Yet at the same time, they also hindered many people from becoming their true selves, finding them more useful as twisted pawns than as true, brightly shining, independent souls that have grown in their own natural direction. He isn't sure how it balances out, but Heine is willing to call it a wash. Anyway, that's all neither here nor there. Ridiculous, screeches a woman standing next to him. Heine finds himself being poked in the chest by a finger soft but a little bony. He looks at the tawny blonde-haired woman there with sharp features, who is clicking with her mouth as she continues to prod him. No matter how often I poke, Heine does not bleed, says the woman. Heine grabs her hand, which is very human in its shape, not having any feathers or talons or anything of the sort, but there is a ring on it. Maybe it's better that way, suggests Heine. She looks at him as he lifts her palm up, kissing her fingers. Obscura pokes him with her other hand. The man sighs, grabbing her other hand and holding both of them. She tries to move her mouth in a familiar pattern, hissing and clicking, but her lips and tongue don't seem to move quite like she wants them to. Troublesome, says the once owl god, looking down at herself. How will she catch Heine's rabbits like this? Asks Obscura. We'll just buy some, replies the man. How will she fly? Asks the woman, wobbling her elbows. That's gonna have to be put on hold indefinitely, replies Heine. The once owl god tilts her head. How can Heine love a human monstrosity such as I? He leans in, kissing her forehead. You look great just like you did before, remarks the man. She lifts her gaze and the two of them stare at each other for a time. Living a new life it takes a while to get used to, remember, he asks. Took me a little bit too before I caught on. He nods his head to the side. Come on, we're going to be late for breakfast, says Heine. I think today is Seltsam's day to cook. Obscura tilts her head. Seltsam has never cooked, remarks the once owl god. Heine shrugs. Everyone has their turn, he replies. She read some books on it, it'll be fine. The two of them walk together out of their room. I read a book on cooking once and it led to disaster, replies Obscura. Heine yelled at poor Obscura. She shakes her head. Since then she does not trust the books, they deceived her, he laughs. It wasn't yelling. You started a fire. She clicks with her tongue, looking at him as she points out of the window. So did Heine several times, but he has yet to be scolded, she remarks, pointing at the gray landscape that surrounds their home. We can figure something out about that later, he replies, nudging her, and she elbows him. Callous, crude Heine, replies the Natal god. Obscura has not even had breakfast yet, she says as the two of them walk through to the living area inside their home inside the great tree. I'm telling you, Sokol, says Rhine. It's fine, wood is porous. Yeah, that's the problem, twerp, replies the elf. It'll soak through and get spongy. It's living wood, it's fine, replies Rhine. Heine looks at the two of them, arguing over something at the table. A warm smell is in the air as vapors waft through from the kitchen, past the table and out of the open window. The rustling of leaves can be heard outside. The young man looks over towards Heine and points at the floor. Are we allowed to mop? We're allowed to mop the floors, right? Heine blinks, pulling out Obscura's chair for her to sit down in. The Natal god hoots. Heine looks around at the giant tree that they're living inside of. Good question. Ask Seltsam when she gets here, he remarks, scooting the chair in. Ask me what? Asks a voice. Heine turns to look at a heavily robed figure coming out of the kitchen, somewhat awkwardly but still present, carrying a large platter. Don't even ask, Selty, says a sharp voice flying after her. Eilig lands on Seltsam's shoulder. You have no idea how depraved these people are, explains the fairy. She points at her eyes and then over to them. Heine shrugs. Is it safe to mop the floors here? Asks Heine. Good question, replies Seltsam, setting down breakfast on the table. It's a nice spread with a little of everything. There's nothing majorly complex, but there are a lot of things, so it looks like it was a lot of work, especially considering she's likely never cooked much before. I'll look into it, but maybe let's just sweep until then, replies the librarian, walking around the table to sit down at her spot. Heine nods, sitting down too as he looks around at the full home he has. Sure, there will need to be a lot of adjusting done, but that's just what it is. People will need to adapt to the way things are now and life will go on. Where's Nakia? He asks, looking around. His leg bumps into something. Sokol shrugs. Heine sighs and leans sideways, looking down below the table. He reaches in and pulls out the froggy woman who was down there below. Ribbit Tilda, says Nakia, looking at him. I wanted to surprise you, she admits. But then I sort of lost my nerve and she shrugs. Then I didn't know what to do, so I froze. Fair enough, replies Heine as she sits down on the bench next to him. She, like Obscura, had given up her godly form in order to be allowed to stay in the mortal coil. She, like Obscura, has had her body changed. Nakia was never able to accept herself as who she was, even if she stood firmly by the choice that caused her to end up that way. So Heine saw it fitting to let her look however she wanted in this final reality. And that is just like she did before, only with her missing leg, fingers, and hair. Fair enough. The man looks down at his mug, full of steaming tea, and into the scarred, burnt reflection that looks back up his way, physically unchanged from the way it had looked all those many seasons ago when this all started. However, if one were sharp-eyed, they might see the smile present there, a development that could only be caused by the fullness of the life that the human, Heine, finds himself inside of. He looks around himself at his family as they all sit down, truly content now. Eilig looks his way, and he looks at her and nods. Having two sisters is odd, but he's getting used to it. Everyone is here. Finally. Everything is just as it was always supposed to be. Heine imagines that in that past life of his, when he used to sit by the window in the old house, that the dusty book he kept in front of himself but never read would tell exactly this story of his life. It's quiet as everyone starts breakfast. Rhine takes a sip of his tea and then looks around the room. "Hey, where's other guy?" "Huh, who?" asks Sokol, already chewing on her breakfast. "Good eggs," she says, nodding to Seltsam. "Tea, thank you," says Seltsam, watching Nakia prod her eggs with her very human tongue. It doesn't seem like a winning strategy. Heine slides a fork over to her. Rhine shrugs. "The guy, you know, he spins a finger. Always stood by the door." They all stare at each other. "Erit?" asks Heine, remembering. Everyone exchanges an unsure glance, not sure if they should be worried about this or not. "Don't worry about it," says Sokol. "He left to go home to his family," she explains. "I gave him his severance package and did the paperwork." "Oh, huh," says Rhine, and then shrugs, returning to his breakfast. Never knew he was a family man. Heine looks up from his food, staring at the elf. Sokol stares back at him, and he understands. It truly never does end, does it? Even now the gods' game is going on, although it would seem that this is finally it. The very last piece has been moved. It's done. It's over. The world fully belongs to humanity now. "Thank you, Sokol," says Heine, nodding to her. Sokol nods back. "Just doing my job, trying to retire, you know." "I know," replies Heine, returning to his breakfast. "I think we managed this time," he says, looking around at his family. Erit walks along the plains, having left the region days ago. The wind billows his cloak as he wanders down the meadows and the fields, towards the place where his true master resides. He arrives, entering a secret, hidden place that is sheltered from the eyes of people and the eyes of gods. It is a sacred, old space that is safe from the outside influence of magics, even powerful magics such as those that belong to the god of death. Erit lowers his hood, walking onward towards a figure that sits in the back, alone atop a throne. It has a massive, long face. It has hooved legs like a monster's, covered in fur, the horse god. "My lord, I've returned," says the ever-quiet Dorman Erit, lowering himself down onto one knee. "It is done just as you planned." The horse god neighs in delight. All of the other gods are gone. It alone remains, residing as the last god on the face of the world, as was its plan all along. The god of death had thought that it could control and manipulate all life, but it had underestimated the cunning of the deity. It found a way to escape death to plan all of this in secret. It was all a game, a ploy to make the world one that fulfills the desires of the horse god, which has been manipulating everything in secret. Its death, its manipulation of the events of the outside world, its twisting of fate to meet its agenda. Everyone, everywhere, has always laughed at the horse god. But now it is the last one laughing. Now is the era of the horse. It rises from its throne. "What of my other agent?" it asks in a hoarse voice. "The elf," Erit nods, taking off his bag. "She remains there, waiting for your orders to finish the job," says Erit. He pulls a box out of his bag. "She sends this gift as proof of her loyalty," says the man, lowering his head and extending the box outward. The horse god, the last god remaining on this mortal world, takes it and looks. Inside is a collection of 5 metal skulls, each of them staring up his way with mouths that are wide and open, screaming as if howling in a silent cry that might never stop. Magic streams out of the previously tightly sealed container. The horse god sputters out water as his legs give way and his fingers begin to crumble, disintegrating into ash. The magical skulls fall out of his hands, the landscape freezing and crackling. The god falls to the ground, his body coming apart as he dies. Erik spins to run away, but a skull rolls towards him, and then he too is no more. The agenda of the horse god, the secret plan to become the last god alive, has failed, along with its final base subversion of the reality that had controlled their lives from the start of all of this. Heine nods, content as he pats his full stomach and listens to the excited babbling conversations that everyone is having. It's good to have a family. This is good. He's happy. He thinks he'll run the forge later, not because he has to for his work, but because he wants to. After all, making weapons is fun. It's just kind of what he does. The end.